What's up? What's up? What's up? Welcome everybody to the thrift store. It is night 6 of 2 weeks of tea, part of Tsp Tv. Excuse me, there's a burp waiting to happen. No, it isn't. Sorry about that. That interrupted me. That would have been a little gift for baby P there. But it is 2 weeks of tea. It is 2 years celebration at Tsp Tv. Thank you for those who are tuning in. And if or not you caught that little brief subliminal there, baby P, happy 21st anniversary to you and your beloved Mr. Pamplin. Why is he not taking you out for dinner, lobsters, champagne and dancing? I don't know, but I'm glad that you did choose to tune in to Tsp TV, because this episode is dedicated to you a little bit, not just the intro, because you did say to me privately that you did want to look forward to seeing a special Stranger Things Montauk project stream. So here you go. So who have we got? We got Maiden. She was first bright and early to the thrift store. Nancy never leaves fan guy. We also have Becky P. And is there anybody else? It says we got 4 at the minute. So not the biggest of turnouts as expected, but that's not to worry about, because we did lose 7 subscribers yesterday, folks. Yes, 7 subscribers decided to leave the thrift store yesterday, but never mind. Those of you that have tuned in, you may or may not be in for a treat tonight, because we are going to be looking at the Montauk project, the real life Stranger Things. Hang on, what have I got going on here? Ooh. Sorry about that. It looks as though the camera was a little bit closer than it should be, but can you hear me okay, guys? Let me know if you can hear and the audio is good. I've kind of lost anything in the chat. I don't know if you guys are still here or not paying attention. We are up to 5 now, so we are up, ready and go. I know you're here, Nancy. As I just said, Nancy never leaves. When I sort of ask these questions, it's a given that you're going to be here, and again, you're still replying, Nancy. Bless you, you little Cajun agent, our little MK Ultra handler sent to haunt us. But Monarch product, the Monarch project will involve a little bit of MK Ultra conspiracy theories, along with UFOs, along with time travel, along with a lot of other. It's like sort of the mothership of all conspiracies, to be quite honest with you. Oh, there she is, baby P. So that was a little bit just for you, and I'm guessing we may have a little bit of a time delay, perhaps, as is the case. And let's not forget to give a special thank you and warm welcome to our good friends, the Google moderator team. I had to write I had to rewind to catch the start. Well, it was a little glimpse of things, kind of like shadow governments hiding inside plain sight. If you look hard enough, you will see. And there was a little glimpse, and you don't even know how long it took me to line up your name with the light and then in the font and everything for that little 4-second snippet just to you. But you are a very special member of the Thrift Sam, and a beacon of light and a star that brightens up the entire thrift store when you are here, baby P. And I can understand exactly why Mr. Papamplin stayed with you. I know his name's not Papamplin, I just like to say Papamplin because it's a funny word. Also sounds like it might be a feminine hygiene product. You know, are you suffering from vaginal odor? Then wipe away the odor with fresh Papamplin wipes. But anyway, hours, I'm sure, not to worry. No, it wasn't hours, it was quite a few minutes. Becky Pamplin, it wasn't hours, not like the time travel intro. That did take quite some time, but I did get my money's worth out of that in the end, because we did pull off a time travel trilogy that was requested partly by some of the Thrift Fam viewers, as we did offer up a choose your own content type deal last Tuesday. So we are done and dusted. We got through our trilogy of time travel, and it kind of left us where we're going to continue a little bit today, because you can kind of see where I'm going, a little bit like serializations. Tune in next week, same time, same channel, same place, be there, be square, that kind of deal. deal, but we are going nightly for the next week. We are almost halfway through. It is night 6, as I mentioned at the start of this. Seems like it only just begun yesterday, and I remember sort of on night 1 I was like, oh my goodness, how am I going to possibly get through this first week? But here we already are, first way through the week, and already into the swing of things and into the roll of things. So hopefully you guys are enjoying 2 weeks of tea so far. Kali Ninja, welcome homeboy, glad to see you here. Now obviously some of you do have daytime jobs unlike me and some of the other thrift fam. That does mean you can't get to tune in each and every single night as you might like to or might not want to, but as I said, people do got other stuff going on. It is the weekend. Sometimes people do have other places to go and see, so I wasn't expecting a big turnout today. But yeah, as I said, after the stream yesterday, when we had a longer than anticipated stream in the end, quite interestingly enough, the first part 1 of the time travel was 1 hour and 40 minutes long, I think, and then the second one was 2 hours 30 minutes, and then the third one was 3. So there's like 1, 2, 3 in parts 1, 2, and 3. I don't know, just thought that was a little bit quirky. It seems we were dealing with time travel. That's better. I need to scoop down a little bit. As I said, can you still hear me okay, guys? Because we are without the mic, the little mic that I used to use. I think that's the trouble when you start doing shit like that, they start to break. But as I was saying, I don't know if not, we've only got 4 watching now, but after the stream yesterday I went and had a little check just to see how many people watched and what the viewing minutes was looking like, and discovered, lo and behold, 7 unsubscribed. I did make a little video actually that I forgot to upload to this phone because I was gonna put it into the stream, but let me see if I can find the yes I can. Well, that's the video, sorry, I'm just looking for the screenshot. Hold on a second, I should have done this and got this out a little bit sooner. It's not here. Oh well, never mind, forget about it. But I can assure you we did lose 7 subscribers yesterday, and that was about 18 for the week. So almost every time I mean I'm going live every day, so it seems every time I do put a stream up I'm guaranteed to lose at least 2, but yesterday we lost 7. So I don't know if that's because people didn't really like time travel and don't like these streams or not. And then funny enough, my computer just shut itself down. There we go, we're back on again now. But as I said, if or not you guys are enjoying them or not, I'm guessing some of you must be, because you are coming back for more, and hopefully you will enjoy tonight's little presentation that I put together for you four. That's all that's here at the minute. So for you 4, you will be getting to watch my presentation. It is a little bit longer than normal. What's up, Kelly? Glad to see you back at the thrift store. Thank you. Come again. So we are, as I said, going to be looking at the Montauk project, which sort of starts off a little bit from yesterday, where we left off with the Philadelphia experiment, and of course that was about the USS Aldridge that was allegedly not only made invisible but was also teleported and transformed through space and time. Not at all devil speaks. We haven't really got up and running as of yet. We did just get the intro. We are kind of going through the formalities of the hellos and goodbyes and yada yadas and whoop-de-woos and ray-tay-tays before we get into it. So it is a little bit long tonight, guys. It is 1 hour and 40 minutes. So those of you who want to make your polite excuses now, maybe is the time, but we do got a long, and hopefully it is quite interesting. There's a lot of stuff, and that is because, as I was saying, the Montauk project is the Mac Daddy. It's like the mothership of all conspiracy theories rolled into one, and who only knows how much of it is true, how much of it is false, how much of it is just urban legends. But there's certainly some contrast to sort of some things that have been reported in real life and found in and around Montauk with regards to the conspiracy, and the conspiracies are very much portrayed in Stranger Things. That's why tonight is a little bit of a Montauk project stroke Stranger Things real life event. So there's a little bit of, as I said, a lot to look at. Luckily for you, there's not so much of listening to me read, but there's a lot more sort of visuals and videos. But a lot of interesting events for those of you who don't know about or have not heard about Montauk Project. As I said, it's like the gold mine of all conspiracy theories. Is like mind control, teleportation, time travel, electromagnetic mind control frequencies, radars, children being abducted and kidnapped, experimentation, everything you could possibly imagine that would make a conspiracy. I don't know what's going on with my camera tonight, if I've got it at a wrong angle or the zoom or something I've set inadvertently, but it just seems a little bit off. But as I said, Montauk is something that is very, very interesting to me, because there's a lot of stuff that I've looked into sort of somehow or one way or another either started or originated or took a little detour through Montauk at some point in time, and it is very much the sort of Area 51 of the northeast. And Montauk is a very, very tiny little fishing town. It was kind of built by the US military to supposedly disguise itself from German bombers back in World War II, or that was the official narrative. But was it built and purposely to look like a little small village to disguise even more deeper and darker, possibly sinister and tyrannical goings on, to be quite honest with you? And a lot of the good old Nazi scientists that were recruited as part of Paperclip after World War II ended up in the think tank of Montauk. So as I said, there is about an hour and 40 minutes worth of stuff to look at. If or not that is something that is exciting and you're like thinking, holy shit, what did I sign up for? Can I fake my death in the next 5 minutes to get out of this, or can I create some scenario of my own to avoid an hour and 30 minutes plus of presentation? But I like to think that the stuff that is contained within it is very, very, well, I'm glad you think so, Nancy, but as we have kind of established, I literally could pick up different turds and said, this is a turd that is created from eating too much Kentucky Fried Chicken. This turd here was the result of eating too much Burger King. And this liquefied matter here is what happens when you eat too much Indian food with too much beer, and you would enjoy it. But that's just a special little Cajun agent you are. But exactly all the qualities that you possess are very much similar to those when they send those little agents in amongst little communities like us to infiltrate and steal data. So if you are a Cajun agent, I'm onto you. You better have a word with your handler, Shah. Is Shah like your code word? Is that what, you know? Are we unraveling a deep and darker mystery in the thrift store? Maybe we should start researching into Nancy and see if she does have any governmental agency ties. And, you know, where did she come from? Nobody knows. She just appeared and she's never left. So could she be a time traveler of her own? Could she be a creature from an interdimensional portal that crawled out of the bayou and now resides in Louisiana, trying to blend in amongst all of us? I'm joking with you. It's Saturday night, guys. It is the weekend. So you lonely, dateless wonders got me for company, but I'm glad I got some dateless wonders here. We've got you. Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. If we're bluffing or not, who knows? But as I said, I knew you would say it was good, but hopefully the other guys will enjoy it too. But before we do start again, you know, the Swamp Agent, a little bit like Swamp Thing, that was something we were chatting about yesterday. So if or not you guys did enjoy the time travel trilogy, I do know Baby P said she's got them lined up ready to binge. Poor Becky. Probably we should get some amens, share if you agree, if we should save Becky from the boredom where the best thing in her life is binge watching Tsp Tv videos. But it's why I love you and so much more. Becky P, you're like the aunt or the grandma I never had, and I would just love one day before I do hit the grave to sit at your kitchen table where you can feed me some biscuits and gravy and sweet iced tea with that soft southern style. Black velvet and a little boy smile. That's all about getting fucked by Big Black Dick, if you didn't know that song. But Black Velvet. But before we do go into the hidden meanings of some of the more contemporary popular songs, Police's, you remember that song, Every Breath You Take, Every Move You Make? It isn't a love song. It's about a stalker who was jilted by his lover, and he's so angry and possessed and demented that he's just stalking her. Every breath he takes, he's watching her. Every move she makes, he's watching her. Like if you say it in a little angry Nigel voice, every move you make, and then you get a new perspective on that song. Just as Golden Brown by the Stranglers was all about shooting up heroin, as was Perfect Day. Can't remember who sung Perfect Day. Help me out, help me out. Yeah, you would be the cool aunt that'd probably give me money for weed and tattoos as long as I didn't tell my mum where I got the money for the weed and the tattoo from, and we'd go down in a blaze of glory if we needed to. Devil speak. I have caught a big catfish in the swamp, and frogs and snakes and more snakes. I've actually eaten snake and catfish, and I did have a Louisianan girlfriend for a while, so catfish was something we did eat some time to time. And I used to cook up a mean catfish down there in the Toronto section of the bayou. There is no such thing. But frogs, I've never ever eaten frogs' legs. I don't know why. It is the sort of, but then again, maybe if you get those toads that like you lick and you get high, I could imagine that would almost be a little bit like eating an edible. I could get it down with that perhaps. But swamps in lizards and snakes and stuff like that, and frogs, they are good eating. And a lot of Cajuns do kind of eat the frog. You know, there's a lot of French influence down there in the Creole and the Cajun cuisine. But I'm not really a huge fan of fish. I don't even really like fish and chips that much. Although occasionally, just sort of that little nostalgic taste of home. There are some burps coming up there, but in an emergency, if you know the shit hit the fan, Nancy down there, I'm pretty sure I could see her with a shotgun and a corn pipe and a straw hat, looking a little bit like Tom Sawyer or Huck Finn, shooting critters. Louisiana, we got another Nancy. Look, you've got a Cajun friend here, so we've got two Cajuns. My goodness, oh my goodness, do you know what's happened, guys? You know what's happened? We've rumbled Nancy's cover. They sent, the handlers sent the new Cajun agents. Okay, abort, get out of there, Nancy, get out of there. They're on to you. Code red, deploy the next Cajun, deploy the next Cajun. We're joking if you've just joined us able-bodied. We were just having a little fun, suggesting that our little Nancy fan guy, the fellow Cajun down here, might be a secret agent sent to infiltrate us and gather data and information and report back to her handlers. Because she possesses all the qualities that a Cajun agent would. So that's nice. Look, we've got another Cajun down there, and it does seem. Sorry, I'm just checking something out on the PC over here. Righty. So Texas and Louisiana, look at that. The sort of southern eastern part of North America does seem to attract the most visitors to the thrift store. So able-bodied, are you a new visitor to the thrift store? Did you stumble across us by chance, or have you been one of those sort of silent viewers that's been around for a little while? It's just been too shy to say hello. But Snake, back to what Devil Speak was speaking about, the stuff he got there. Snake was actually quite delicious, and I had it kind of like breaded, a little bit like KFC or fried chicken, when I was down in Florida, which they sort of eat sort of gators and stuff like that. I had gator as well. But Snake was quite nice. Stumbled in just now, first time. Well, we're glad we can pop your thrift store cherry, and we are going to be talking about the Montauk project, the goings on up there at Camp Hero in Long Island, New York State, and in regards to the real life Stranger Things. That's where Stranger Things was based on, and we are going to be looking at in a little while a little presentation that I did throw together of some little documentaries, reports, TV interviews and things, and a couple of, well, actually it's not a couple, there's one article that I do read to you that come out recently in the New York Post about Montauk, because ever since Stranger Things come out, it's become a little bit of a tourist destination, a little bit kind of like people go to Roswell in Area 51, sort of almost like a pilgrimage. So lots of people have been going to Montauk, but the interesting thing is that sort of pre-Stranger Things, I can remember looking at Montauk project sort of documentaries and articles on the internet, and there seem to be a lot more of them than there are now. And in recent times, since Stranger Things, there seems to be an awful lot of saturation of what kind of looks like corporate YouTubers or Instagram shills that kind of go there doing like almost paranormal activity type deals, like walking around with their camcorders and helmet cams and stuff like that, with the sort of green nightlight type effect, exploring it. And it is a fascinating place to explore. It's got, you know, some old World War II and some Cold War nuclear bunkers. But was all of this just a big front to hide something far more sinister? Delhi? What's going on in Delhi? Grand Isle. Volksburg. Oh, Vicksburg, Mississippi. You're talking about from where you come, from the devil. I'm guessing some. And Nancy, you speaking Cajun or something now because you've got a fellow Cajun in there, or is that your like code words to your handler? Nancy in a secret. I would love a secret bunker. It was also always sort of one of my sort of secret, weird, and twisted childhood fantasies to live in a nuclear bomb shelter for some reason. I don't know why I thought it would be fun, but I did watch a lot of horror movies and stuff as well growing up, and especially Dawn of the Dead when they shacked up in the shopping mall. That to me was like, fuck me, that'd be a great way to spend the apocalypse, running around a big shopping mall. And if or not you guys want a zombie apocalypse special in the next 8 days, as we do have 8 days to fill before we reach the 29th of November, the 2-year birthday anniversary date for TSP TV, comments below. Let me know if you want to see a zombie apocalypse special stream in the coming days. But back to tonight's stream, as I said, we are going to be looking at the Montauk project very shortly. And for those of you who are going to stick around, then I would suggest maybe going using the restroom now. Go find yourself some snacks, maybe a beverage, roll yourself a little something if you need to, before we do start it. Because as I said, it did start to get a little bit longer than I thought. And I thought, do I really want to drag this over 2 parts like I sort of dragged out the time travel trilogy? Not so much. But then I did realize, again, it is Saturday night. Sometimes it's not a school night. People stay up a little bit later. Sometimes it's tomorrow. JFK is tomorrow, right? It's the 21st today. It's the 22nd, right? 22/11. I'm sure it's 22/11. So that will be tomorrow, because that was my scheduling, that tomorrow we were going to do a JFK special. My daughter wrote a zombie apocalypse novel. Well, most zombie apocalypses do start with a virus, which is why I'm saying, would you like to see a zombie apocalypse special? Because there's so much more fiction to decode in terms of zombie apocalypse. And funny enough, George A. Romero's original Dawn of the Dead that he wrote back in the 70s was a social commentary on what he saw at his local shopping mall, because sort of shopping malls started to crop up in the sort of 70s in the bigger sort of cities, and by the time the 80s come around, they were in every small town across North America. And that's a little bit what Stranger Things was all about. The shopping mall that kind of closed down most of the businesses in town, but it was really a front. Once they closed down the power plant, they transformed underneath the shopping mall, and this is a thing that once Montauk, the actual airbase Camp Hero, was shut down by the military in 1983, did it relocate somewhere else, to Hawkins, Indiana perhaps, where it hid itself among a power plant. But anyway, 11/22. So yeah, 11/22/63. A lot of numerology going on in that date for sure. But anyway, as I said, guys, we do got quite a long presentation to get through tonight. But as I said, my apologies for that. It was like, should we drag this into a 2-part event or not? So I decided, as it is the JFK anniversary tomorrow, and we do got a JFK special event thing planned, although I still yet to record it for you, but I got stuff lined up, so don't you worry. we should have something for you tomorrow. So as I said, guys, now is the time to go and get yourself comfortable, take a refresher break, take a piss, take a shit if you need to, roll yourself something, go smoke, put the coffee on, pour yourself something. As I said, now is the time. Let me start getting ready. Camera is off. Power number, 1122. And provoked the 57 to take power out of the CIA that JFK first created 57 years ago. Smoke them if you got them. Funny enough, my roommate discovered he was doing some cleaning out at one of his relatives' houses, and he found a box of 35-year-old Winstons, which I smoked one today. It's the oldest cigarette I think I've ever smoked knowingly. You never know what you do buy from the convenience store. But anyway, guys, hopefully if you are all in place, ready and comfortable, I will disable my microphone and we'll start this evening's proceedings and our presentation on the Montauk project, the real life Stranger Things. So thumbs up if you're ready to go, guys, or say something, let me know. Okay, Devil Speak, you're leading the charge. Good man. Said, now it's the time that we start getting ready. Camera is off.
They could fire a
power number, 1122. Smoke them if you got them. Funny enough, my now it's the time that we start getting ready. Camera is off.
They could fire a
The U.S. military had another trick up their sleeve.
We're now in what is called downtown Camp Hero. It's a cluster of buildings that during World War II were disguised to look like a New England fishing village from the air. So if enemy aircraft were to come over, the guns would come up and they would just blast them right out of the sky.
When World War II ended, Camp Hero continued to be a strategic military location.
This is the radar dish. This was built by the Air Force in 1960, and it had the ability to detect aircraft up to
Yo, can you hear me, guys? There's sound now. Okay, let me try it again. Sorry about this. I don't know what was going on. A little pop-up come up on my screen, something about the sound, and then it disappeared. I don't know if I can rewind this. All right, I'm going to start again. Sorry about that, guys. Let's hope you've got some sound now.
The site is now a New York State park. Osmer, who wrote a book on Camp Hero, hopes Long Islanders will remember it for the role it played in protecting our nation.
The history out here is unique. It's just incredible.
In Montauk, Danielle Campbell, News 12, Long Island.
Just 3 hours from Manhattan, on the eastern tip of Long Island is Montauk, New York. There you'll find a mysterious abandoned military base called Camp Hero that spawned dozens of urban legends, from widespread child abductions to time travel, to covert mind control experiments. These bizarre purported occurrences are collectively known as the Montauk Project. Montauk's been an obsession of mine for over 30 years.
The story goes, between 1971 and 1983, secret experiments happened at the Camp Hero Air Force Base, which is only about a mile from here. When I was a kid, I walked along this stretch of shore here, and I didn't realize there was a base here until military personnel stopped me and told me to go the other way. And it sparked my interest for so many years going forward. I spent about 13 years investigating the alleged Montauk Project.
Local children were abducted off the streets, brought to the base, and subjected to brutal mind control experiments. The now decaying Sage radar tower. To be clear, the government's official position is there is no underground structure of any kind here at Camp.
Thousands of government-sponsored experiments did take place at hospitals, universities, and military bases around our nation. Some were unethical, not only by today's standards, but by the standards of the time in which they were.
We are not professing to tell you the complete story of these activities. We are professing to tell you the complete story that is...
The Montauk Project, which was an experiment carried on at Montauk Point, New York, on the southeastern tip of Long Island, was essentially two projects. It was a mind control project where they did research on how to influence the mind of man using electromagnetics. It also evolved into a time travel project.
Long Island, New York, America's fastest growing community. Home, place of business, playground for the millions who live in Nassau and Suffolk counties. But Long Island wasn't always like this. Not many years ago, it was a quiet, semi-rural community, just a place where things were going to happen. And this is our story.
Long Island, New York, specifically the east end of Long Island, which was once primarily a sleepy fishing community. Now it's more well known as being home of the Hamptons, and when people think of the Hamptons, they typically picture, insane wealth, massive houses, amazing beaches. Of course, you have your beach bars, your roadside lobster roll stands, and such. Military bases and conspiracy theories, including time travel, child abduction, mind control, and teleportation, do not exactly come to mind. And Montauk specifically, what was once a small, sleepy fishing town, is now a celebrity and mega mansion-infested summer party town. But most people tend to overlook a lot of the things that are hiding in plain sight. Now, in Montauk, the landmark that everyone knows, even if they've never even been to Montauk, is the Montauk Lighthouse. However, other than locals, the majority of people have no idea that right next to the lighthouse lies a massive decommissioned military base known as Camp Hero. Now it's known as Camp Hero State Park. And this park is massive. It's over 700 acres with tons of untouched coastline with massive 50-foot bluffs and endless views of the ocean and out to the lighthouse. Now, Camp Hero has been around for a while and it's had several phases of use and construction. The first major phase was during the start of World War II from 1942 through 1957 when it was primarily used for coastal defense. Following that phase, the Air Force took control of Camp Hero and operated it as the 773rd Aircraft Control and Warning before becoming the 26th Air Division and operating as an air direction center. Now, one of the main features that everybody who's been to Camp Hero knows, and maybe even people that haven't been there, is the massive radar tower and radar dish that was installed in 1958. That brought the base into the National Defense Network and a major part of the NORAD defense system. It was renamed yet again in 1963 to the 773rd Radar Squadron SAGE until it was officially, quote-unquote, shut down again in 1980. More on that later. And what makes this park really unique is that many of the original military buildings are scattered throughout the park, most notably the massive radar tower. It's a SAGE radar tower, which stands for Semi-Automatic Ground Environment. It's a Cold War era early warning system for the U.S. defense systems. It said that it would give the U.S. a 30-minute advance warning of any kind of enemy vessels, in this case, German submarines or warships. Now, while the radar tower is the obvious standout, there's many other strange things, pun intended, scattered throughout the park. About half a mile from the radar tower are a cluster of buildings from the first phase of the base, which resemble a small coastal fishing village.
Were disguised to look like a New England fishing village from the air, so if enemy aircraft were to come over, the guns would come up and they would just blast them right out of the sky.
The gymnasium was even hidden to look like a church. This area is often referred to as the downtown of Camp Hero. In a short distance from the radar tower are several massive gun batteries hidden in man-made hillsides. These guns were either 16-inch or 6-inch cannons that could shoot enormous shells over 25 miles out to sea to take out German warships and submarines. It's said there's a massive tunnel system that runs through the base and between the gun batteries for troops to easily go between the different gun batteries. Now, the government has never officially confirmed that there are these underground tunnels, but in this news video, there's a caretaker of the park that actually confirms their existence.
In the event there was any kind of an attack going on, they could communicate and go between these installations safely underground. They did fire the guns off now and then just for practice. The shock waves went all the way back to town, which is about 6 miles. There's some reports that say windows cracked.
And this is where some of the conspiracy theories start about Camp Hero. The military has never publicly acknowledged there's an underground complex at the base. However, a lot of these former workers say they've been inside some of these tunnels, and some of them are as long as 500 feet. And while the land of the base is now a state park, the federal government still owns everything underground. Now, back to those strange things I mentioned earlier. While many locals often spoke about animals going crazy, people becoming sick, and electronics suddenly dying due to the radar dish, conspiracy theories went into overdrive when a guy named Preston Nichols published a book titled The Montauk Project, Experiments in Time in 1992. The book spoke of teleportation, time travel, alien technology, interplanetary travel, mind control experiments, and child abduction. You know, your everyday things in Long Island. Nichols claims to have been a radar tech there and worked closely on the Montauk's experiments. In this grainy video from 1994, shortly after the base was closed down and still relatively intact, Nichols narrated a tour of the base. In this video, he speaks of UFO landing pads, offices for the Reptilian, a Timothy Leary-inspired psychedelic painted experiment house for mind control, and of course, the radar tower. I better let him use his own words.
This is the bunker where the Montauk Boys project was done. This is where the boys were actually stripped of their mind, and the mind was reformed through computers and reinserted in the body of the boy. Now, this next office is the secretary for the alien. Across the way was the alien's office, a reptilian that sits on the floor from the AIO computer. Somebody pulled these chassis out. For what, we don't know. We're now seeing new wiring that goes up to the roof. Some of this wiring has dates of like 89 on it. This wire we're looking at here is dated 1988. It has a nick in it to make it look used. The nick is just deep enough so it doesn't hurt the function of the wiring, but it looks old. They would do this to camouflage it so nobody would notice it. But if you look at the date and know how to read the date codes, you realize it's new wire. We're now inside the UFO landing pad or FPS-6 radar tower. This is early mind control in these rooms. This is the black and white room. I've seen pictures of a room just like this in a Timothy Leary report, that Mr. Leary used a room like this to enhance LSD experiments.
He said the radar was how thoughts and people were teleported to other locations. He claimed the government was abducting children in the area and turning them into super soldiers under government mind control. This group of abducted kids was to be known as the Montauk Boys. while the base officially shut down in 1994, many people say it has been active well beyond that. In fact, as recently as 2011, there have been reports of the radar dish changing direction. Some news that did actually make it out of Montauk came in 2008. A deformed creature washed up on the shore of Ditch Plains Beach in Montauk, and it was affectionately named the Montauk Monster. Experts say it's just a badly deformed and decayed raccoon, but you be the judge. This definitely does not look like any kind of raccoon I've seen before. And this just further fueled conspiracy theories, because Plum Island, which is another hotbed of conspiracy theories, which is the United States Animal Testing Facility, which is right off the coast of Montauk. People assumed it was an experiment gone wrong, and this creature escaped from there and had something to do with the base. More conspiracy theories started popping up again when in 2015, Montauk Chronicles was featured on the Discovery Channel. Then there was a follow-up in 2018 on History Channel's Dark Files. This took you through some of the more recent conspiracy theories and some of the up-to-date research that was done around Camp Hero. If this sounds like some bizarre science fiction fantasy, you wouldn't be far off. You may even say this sounds vaguely familiar. A kidnapped child, superpowers, secret government agency in a creepy-looking building. What many people do not know is that the hit Netflix show Stranger Things was originally sold to Netflix under the name Montauk. When the creators of Stranger Things pitched the show to Netflix, they created a Stephen King-inspired book with the radar tower right on the cover. The original setting of the show took place in Montauk before it was moved to the fictional setting of Hawkins, Indiana. This set off a new wave of conspiracy theories and reignited people's interest in the base. You know, one quick search of YouTube will see countless Stranger Things styled YouTube videos of people breaking in and exploring a lot of the different areas. Now, if you're ever in the area and you're out in Montauk, I highly recommend checking out Camp Hero. It's such a surreal setting. It's hidden in plain sight. Most people completely pass this by on their way to the Montauk Lighthouse. And what's crazy about Camp Hero is that you're in the middle of Montauk, some of the most expensive real estate in the country. Beachfront property is next to impossible, and here you have more than a couple miles of just pristine, untouched beach that you have access to going through the park. The coastline and the views are just amazing, and it's definitely something you're not going to see anywhere else in the Hamptons. If you do explore further, just beware the ticks, since, you know, Plum Island is nearby. I'll let you go down that rabbit hole on your own if you ever want to look up Lyme disease related to Plum Island. But I hope you check it out. I've been there a couple times now, and every time I'm there, I find something new. Sadly, I have not found any alien activity, but it's still just a rare, surreal, and bizarre place. I've never seen anything like it anywhere else in the country or the world, for that matter, especially being in the middle of, you know, one of the most popular beach towns in America. So check it out, Camp Hero, Montauk. So I couldn't help myself with making my own Stranger Things video. So here it is.
guys, hopefully that has whetted your appetite a little bit and given you a hunger and thirst for knowledge for some more stuff on Montauk. So here's a little post, a little article from the New York Post. It came out just a few weeks ago, as it happens, at that time of recording in October 2024, and it seems the popularity of Stranger Things and the fact that maybe many fans of the show are finding out about the Montauk project and the fact that it's based on real life events or real life urban legends, should we say. Maybe some of the mainstream articles are covering this as part of as popular interest, but it is interesting little article. We've got some stuff to look at here. Hopefully it won't take too long to get through. Now I have had to re-record this because for some reason before it was making my eyes go funny and I couldn't read it, so I had to take a little break and come back and try again. So anyway, bear with me as we do try to get through this. So an individual named Joe, I can't read his second name so I won't try and butcher it, you can read that for yourself, has worked at the wild craggy eastern tip of Long Island, now called Camp Hero State Park, for 18 years. He knows the spooky abandoned military base which supposedly inspired the Netflix series Stranger Things, as I was just saying, better than most. It's a place that is dominated my life and my nightmares, he told the Post. And here are a few pictures of the place. I don't know if you can see there. That's what it looks like today. And due to the fact that I've zoomed in a little bit, let me see if I can zoom out. Get a better look, and I'll zoom back in to read the words. So this is what it looks like, and it is a very, very spooky, scary looking building in its own rights, without adding some of the sort of deep and scary and spooky secrets and mysteries and conspiracies that are alleged to have gone on there. And it kind of does look a little bit sort of similar to a death camp, and there's an interesting little piece of graffiti there of a one-eyed alien. But not really that much to see. You can see there they got it like fenced off and stuff, so the public can't sort of go tinkering in and around it, although people do go there quite a lot. You can find a lot of people that go to Camp Hero and explore it because it is very, very spooky looking. And there it is now. It looks very, very ominous, as I said, almost like a little face there perhaps for those two. One there, look, and that could be the mouth if you're following me. But anyway, let's crack on. Let's get the little words bigger so I can read them and won't be squinting. So Stranger Things fans flock to that, and that's what I'm saying. It's become a little bit of a tourist destination for fanboys and girls of the TV show. All those geeks and nerds out there love that shit. But many of the fans flock to the Cold War era radio tower. But during the Cold War, it was built during the Cold War to warn citizens of possible Soviet nuclear attacks at a former military base here in Montauk. Stories of secret mind control experiments take place here, helped inspire the series. And again, are they kind of trying to discredit the conspiracy theories, the myths, the urban legends, and the stories about the mind control, time travel, aliens, teleportation into parallel dimension in experimentation, stuff like that? Is that all designed to divert us away from the truth by mocking it? But anyway, many people are going there and visiting the place, and this is probably why this article has just come up, because also Stranger Things season 4 is about to air at some point in the not so distant future. But many locals in Montauk mock the tales about the Camp Hero being at the site of secret government experiments involving mind control, time travel, wormholes, teleportation, and kids hooked up to wires hidden in underground labs. And is that what Save the Children is really all about? Removing these children that have been taken against their wills and have been experimented on. It's got nothing to do with the elites needing adrenochrome, and kids are being kidnapped to be made into McNuggets and milkshakes for them to enjoy, just so they can get their adrenochrome into their system. But anyway, which is also something I think is a little bit of misdirection on the internet during COVIDian eras. Keep us distracted, keep us down rabbit holes that go nowhere. But the rumors about this place took place in 1992, 11 years after the base at Camp Hero was shut down. And a book that allegedly has been debunked, called The Montauk Project Experiments in Time by Preston Nichols told of sinister Nazi-style experiments that meddled genetically and psychologically with kidnapped local boys. And remember Operation Paperclip, guys. You should know all about Operation Paperclip. Those of you who don't, after World War II, the Allied forces, rather than prosecute and imprison or maybe even execute some of these evil Nazi scientists that carried out all sorts of atrocities during World War II, its secret Nazi labs and death camps on other unsuspecting, unwilling humans, they were rounded up and Americanized, given new identities, given plush jobs at the alphabet agencies, and set to work in places like Montauk on stuff that we just spoken about: time travel, wormholes, mind control, yada yada, whoopie woo, ray tay tay. You should be up to date by now. But historian Henry Osmer's laments, how do you say that word? He gets upset about the conspiracy theories have brought in gawkers, and by gawkers he means tourists or out of town. You out of town folk, you just don't understand our ways with your electronic communication devices and your horseless carriages that you travel around in. You come to our small town, you don't understand our ways, you don't respect the broken stone. And that's what kind of little small town folk were like, a little bit in English. They didn't trust outsiders. That's probably a little bit why these sort of people that live in Montauk now are getting upset at the fact that due to the popularity of the show, more and more people and outsiders are coming to their little hamlet. As it is, if it's smaller than a village, it is a hamlet. A little bit of education for you there that I'm sure you're going to have already forgotten. But another local rather, Paul Fagan spent 14 years exploring Camp Hero and painstakingly researching government documents at the National Archives in Manhattan. He told the Post there may be a nuclear reactor secretly buried at the site, installed around 1958 as part of the Cold War era Army nuclear power program. Now, Montauk was as we saw in a couple of those little clips, was during World War II, was opened as a sort of defense gun outpost in case there were any invading U-boats or Nazi planes descending on the east coast, the northeast coast of the United States. Well, that's what they said it was, but it took place, or it opened up in 1943, which was around the same time that the Philadelphia experiment took place. Coincidence? In much of the results and research as a result of the Philadelphia experiment was then allegedly taken to Montauk, and the experimentation that they found was continued on, progressed, perfected, whatever at Montauk, as the stories go. But anyway, he spent an awful lot of time researching it. It was a nuclear reactor, or used as a nuclear reactor around 1958, and it was also used as an early warning system. It could give 30 minutes notice to American citizens of an impending nuclear strike from the commies. But he suspects that the conspiracy theories about Camp Hero may have been planted, and this is interesting, to deflect from the possible reactor. Is the reactor theory a deflection from the time travel, mind control, wormhole theories, right? Controlled opposition, give a little bit of truth but hide it in multiple lies. But this guy, Lafrino, I think that's how you say it, Joe as his name was, the 53-year-old grew up in Montauk and now works as a park employee at Camp Hero, but he also sincerely believes he is one of the lost and tortured Montauk boys, popularized in Nichols' book. And there I think is a picture of him, and there is a scary looking entrance to one of the underground bunkers at Montauk. And there's Joe there, works at what is now Camp Hero State Park, but he believes he was abducted as a boy, taken through one of the old gunnery tunnels to an underground lab where experiments were conducted on him. I didn't believe it until 2 years ago, Joe says. I was hypnotized by a certified hypnotist for about 40 minutes, and all of these memories flooded back. They did a very bad thing to us out there. We were little kids. They had no right experiment on us. It was very dark, very evil thing. He also believes he was abducted and abused during the summer of 1980 and possibly during the summer of 81 when he was 12 or 13. He recalled under hypnosis that another local boy who nobody really knew that much went out with him one day on a bike ride to the base, where they then eventually, as it goes on to say here, they got taken down to an underground bunker by a couple of guys dressed as civilians, and later he and the other boys were then housed in Battery 113, one of the sealed gunneries left from World War II. Now, Battery 113 is kind of about ballistics and cannons and guns and stuff. And and that's what battery fire is a terminology to ballistics, I believe. I do have a little bit of military knowledge, but not the greatest to be able to explain exactly what a battery is. But the two batteries, were they actual batteries that were there to power something larger and greater than cannons and guns during World War II? Were these the batteries? There's the power. Batteries, the power source to the underground lab, is what I'm saying. Or are they conductor? Can they conduct and can they emit power? Tesla technology and that sort of stuff. But they were taken down to the underground lab, where he was eventually laid out on a table, where they wired him up with electrodes, and they analyzed him and his buddies like animals. And he says there was up to 50 of them at one time, and he believes some of them were later killed. Or maybe some of them also died during experiments. But it would be easy to write him off as a cook, but he is gainfully employed at the park, has a steady girlfriend, and appears to have a solid relationship like his kids, and doesn't come across at all like the mad, rambling, frantic, tinfoil hat wearing stereotypical conspiracy theorist that you might picture conjuring up such wild allegations as this. But he said that while under hypnosis, he went to the location he remembered with another parks employee, Charlie, who was also interviewed by the Post, and there they found remnants of a sunken house from his visions. And there is a picture of Al, the character from Stranger Things, hooked up to electrodes, similar to what this Joe individual is talking about in his experiences that he remembered under hypnosis. And again, if you were carried out on some mind control experiments, and you might have, and that is the part and parcel of MK Ultra and Monarch, that they implant minds and memories and programs and instructions to you that you just will have no recollection of whatsoever, but they are in your brain somewhere. And there is on the left hand side the Demo Gorgon, one of the demons that resulted come out of the pool as a result of the experimentation carried out. Now, although the Montauk Camp Hero site was shut down in 83, there's a very, very good chance that the research was relocated and contracted out to an outside government contractor, and probably part of the militarized industrial complex, where they can kind of carry out their clandestine stuff without having to go under the guise of the government, and then the government wouldn't have to cover it up so much, but they could also benefit from it. The research as being a government contractor, and that is the case in Stranger Things, that the secret lab is hidden away under a power plant in secret. And Stranger Things takes place in Hawkins, Indiana, very, very small town, almost very similar to Montauk, with not very many folks around, just a handful of sort of everybody knows everybody, everybody's into each other's businesses, perfect place to hide in plain sight. But back to the article. As I said, we will be looking a little bit more and talking more about Stranger Things in regard to Montauk, and doing some fiction decoded once this presentation is finished. So I'm only going to bring you this one article, because I'm pretty sure you do get a little bit bored of me talking on and on and on, but there are one or two of you that enjoy it for more than just the accent factor. But there are a few more videos and stuff, hopefully, that you'll find interesting and enjoyable before we do return live to the thrift store studio, where, for those of you that have been paying attention, we can maybe discuss and chat about some of the things that we've seen, you're seeing, and are about to see. But if we had a backhoe and my boss let me dig in that spot, which I know he won't, I can guarantee we'd find some cement structures down there, Joe said. Um, and the park superintendent there, Tom Dest, did not return calls for comment, interestingly enough. But filmmaker Christopher, um, that word you can read it yourself. I'm not going to try. Garantano. I did try. Look at me going against the things in my better nature. But who grew up near Montauk, made a 2014 documentary, The Montauk Chronicles, which is pretty interesting. And we are going to not watch it in its entirety, but we do have a few bits and pieces, some trailers in a documentary about the documentary to whet your appetite, and maybe you might want to go and look into that yourself. But that's got some very interesting things in there, and again, sort of, you might have to take some of it with a little bit of a pinch of salt, and some of it may have been dramatized a little bit for sensationalism. But that he detailed the allegations of three men: Al um, Nicholas Al Ballot. They always, why they also have names that you can never read? Why can't they just be called Dave Andrews or John Smith or Roger Smart or Ian Davis? They're always ridiculous names, and I think that might even be part and parcel of their programming or personas, perhaps. But anyway, these individuals that he documented said that they were brainwashed and forced against their will to take part in the experiments at Camp Hero between 71 and 83. Although Stuart Swallow, what's fucking SS, AB, and Nichols. Trying to think if there's any numerology or gematria going on there. But in the 70s and the 80s, Nichols had led something called the psychotronic movement, which is very interesting in regards to all the things I've been talking about in recent weeks with electromagnetic frequency and social media mind control, and the fact there's a very, very strong possibility and even stronger plausibility that you and I are being controlled electromagnetically by our governments, who are projecting what desired thoughts and behavior patterns they desire into our minds against our will, unknowingly, because many of us have been hypnotized and brainwashed and had our minds controlled by our little artificial intelligent algorithmic handler that resides within our cellular smart technology, surveillance, monitoring, advanced research technology. That's what SMART stands for, and that's what our little artificial handlers do. Find out all of our personal information, just like a Monarch, an MK Ultra handler would, and then uses all that against us in order to control and manipulate our minds and thoughts. But he's saying that they were using electromagnetic waves to plant thoughts in people's heads, and maybe that's what was going on with the residents of Montauk, that the electromagnetic frequencies were being planted in their heads to make them think there was absolutely nothing abnormal going on there in the slightest. But Nichols, who died 2 years ago, claimed he was part of the so-called Montauk project, but recovered his memories only after the fact. And as I said, in the early days of the experimentation in MK Ultra and Monarch programming, there's going to be some some failures before you get to the successes, right? So some of these people that they were used as guinea pigs, they may not have took to the programming so well, or they may not have had their programming down to perfection, and somehow, some way, they may have retained all of their thoughts and memories that they were trying to make them forget with their programming and experimentation. But the guy whose names we can't read again told the Post that he felt Nichols and the others were not believable, but he then went on to explore Camp Hero so doggedly that he employed a geophysicist to analyze the ground beneath the old base. He said they found evidence of a large structures not seen on any official maps. Interesting. But then he goes on to say, forget all that alien MK Ultra, a CIA mind-controlled experiment from the 1950s and 60s crap, because because that's exactly what they want you to do with controlled opposition. I think there was some type of experiment out there using teenagers or maybe runaways from New York. Now, I don't know if any of you guys are aware of a TV show called The Marvel Runaways, although I have not watched it or seen it or have any intentions to watch or see it, to be quite honest with you. Back in the 1980s, there was, and this is where the series comes from, it was originally a mini series comic. There's about 3 or 4 episodes, issues rather, of the Runaways. In I think in the modern day version, these are kids that have run away from their parents. But I believe in the 1980s version, they'd run away or escaped from a secret laboratory. Another popular TV show and a made-for-TV movie of the 80s that we've mentioned in our time travel in 1985 decoded special streams recently was Misfits of Science. Again, some young kids that worked at a secret lab where they were dealing with mind control and teleportation stuff, and they were kind of, some of those had superpowers. One of the girls, in fact, Courtney Cox, was not too dissimilar to Little Al from Stranger Things, but that was a very interesting show. It kind of had very sort of similar themes to Stranger Things, and certainly some some similarities very much to what was going on at Camp Hero as part of the Montauk project. But once it was an army base during World War II, as we saw in a couple of those little brief old school archive videos at the start of this presentation, and during the Cold War, it was used as a nuclear reactor, nuclear deterrent system, but it was decommissioned in 81 and is now owned by the state park system, and it sits on 755 acres of thick forests and desolate wastelands, and it's also got a lot of cliffs and is surrounded by water pretty much, I believe. So it is a very impenetrable place, although you could probably it's not, you can go there, but if you really did need to sort of fortify it and defend it, you probably could do a pretty good job. And especially if there were like underground tunnel systems that you could get back to mainland or other parts of the state, then it would be a very, very good location indeed for secret operations to go on. But thanks to Nicholas' series of books and the success of Stranger Things, Camp Hero has become Long Island's Area 51, and probably now it might start getting a little bit more popular, and maybe this is why you can't find as many articles and information and documentaries about Montauk anymore. Maybe a lot of this stuff has been silenced, censored, and shadow banned away in the dark and misty depths of YouTube and the internet and other stuff like that, and they're sort of kind of now providing you with a lot of controlled opposition articles on that try to discredit the previous myths and urban legends and conspiracy theories regarding Montauk. But as I said, it's become a very, very much a sort of tourist destination, and then they go on to say it's a very eerie site that looks like something out of the Twilight Zone. And that alone, it is a spooky place, and it's somewhere I'd like to go and explore. And I wish I was able to get myself out there and have a little look round with the camera. That would make a very interesting video for you all to not watch or pay attention to, as some of you do. But there are a few that do watch and pay attention, and trust me guys, this is who I'm making it for. You guys know who you are. But looming high above all of it is the last of the super powered Cold War era SAGE radar. Now I do know what SAGE stands for, but I've forgotten what it stands for right now. Maybe if we've got Devil Speak watching in the crowd, he's an individual with lots of information and knowledge on stuff like that. He can answer that for us, and for those in the chat who are wondering, but I did remember purposely to tell you about it, but only to forget. But the radio tower, there's one still remaining in stands, and it was constructed in the event of a Soviet nuclear attack with the intention of giving the US a 30-minute warning. The antenna emitted up to 425 megahertz, which is also the frequency allegedly needed to enter human consciousness. Is that coincidence? Is that conspiracy? Is that convenient? You tell me. And although they're saying it's been decommissioned, has it been? Has it though? It said MK Ultra be decommissioned But looking at your social media feed, if you do pay attention to what I do try to inform you about in regards to that on this channel in recent weeks, you will see very, very much the stark evidence that is there right in front of your face, guys. They are MK ultraing the masses via social media with Monarch programming. Copy and paste the bunny, guys, but change what it's holding was a trigger to follow. And millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of people followed that trigger to follow. It starts off with copying and pasting a bunny but changing what it's holding. But when does it it might stop it? Copy and paste the bunny but pick up a knife from your kitchen and stab your loved ones in the throat. And that's how Monarch programming works, people. Exactly how it works and what it was designed to do. So start worrying if or not you think there's nothing to, and it's harmless to just copy and paste a bunny that was suggested on your newsfeed that you immediately reacted to and did exactly what it said, and then think not if you need to worry about if you'll be that easily manipulated to indeed pick up a lethal weapon and then go and club a loved one to death, should they ever choose to put that particular programming in your mind using 425 megahertz in what is alleged to be decommissioned Cold War era nuclear detection radar systems. But even the locals, back to the article, who decoy the secret underground base, again, are they being programmed to provide this by the antenna that they're dismissing? Doesn't do that. Interesting thought there, don't you think? But they dismiss the underground base stories and admit that the tower was up and running, and they do admit, however, that the tower is up and running and it has interfered with television sets and other electronics, and that many people reported suffering from headaches. And we were talking about suffering from headaches just the other day in the social media and media engineering stream we started out 2 weeks of tea. 2-year celebration, Tsp Tv, yada yada, whoop de woo, ray tay tay. You should know that rhetoric by now. But we were talking about that, and we're suggesting that are these the result of electromagnetic frequencies? And then people who even live there that dismiss all the secret bases have said that this goes on. So that does lay some strong suspicion and possible credible evidence that indeed it hasn't been decommissioned, and there is a very strong possibility that the locals of Montauk are having their minds controlled by electromagnetic frequencies. And I'm telling you guys, this shit is probably as real, and I would probably not necessarily stake my life on it, but I'd probably put a couple of pairs of nice fancy Adidas down as a wager. But anyway, he said one resident of 40 years, sorry, I don't want to add fuel to the fire because I don't believe all the zombie stuff, said one resident of 40 years, but the impact that tower had on the town was real. I don't know if it affected our thoughts like some people say, but it was a force. Very, very interesting. The now rusting 90-foot tower and 40-foot wide dish is a draw for tourists who come to explore the WW2 Gunner Outpost and spooky boarded up buildings. Montauk Lighthouse near Camp Hero, and this is some other sort of local pieces of tourist attractions, I guess. A lighthouse, very interesting. Lighthouses may be connected to the base one way or another. But the army designed the base to look like a fishing village, hiding it in plain sight, guys. So it's designed to look like a village, supposedly to destroy German bombers. Oh, look, don't bomb there. It's a navy village, not a military base. Even though soldiers actually lived there. And this was, as was just said, to fool the Nazis. A church that was actually a gym remains but a series of Cape Cod style houses that have been torn down after the war. The Air Force took over the site, shutting it down in 81. At that point, according to Nichols' books and a host of other researchers, bizarre things started happening. I believe it's entirely possible that the human experiment stories are true, said Peter Beauvais, a former Manhattan advertising executive and author of the novel Montauk time. Scientifically, that word I can't read, I'm squinting out. Psychologically, it is conceivably real. I believe that there were army experiments out there that involved interdimensional travel, and the fallout from that still exists, like a tear in the space-time continuum, something we were talking about, and that's why we led our time travel series of streams into this special Stranger Things themed Montauk project special event. It's not really that special, to be honest with you, but it is part of 2 weeks of tea, 2 weeks of streams. That is part of a special event celebrating our 2-year anniversary. There's a little bit more of the rhetoric for you. But he spent some summers in the area since child and knows just about everything in town. Having said that, there's no hard evidence that I've seen to prove it. But the co-writer Vincent Barbaric, who used the pen name Peter Moon, interesting, told the Post, "We are dealing with a phenomenon that is not just a three-dimensional one. If you research sacred geometry, Montauk is known for being a power vortex geologically. It is an underground mountain," and something we were sort of chatting about yesterday with regards to the Yellowstone volcanoes that were more interesting than my presentation for the first part of yesterday's stream. But nonetheless, there are some relevance there, or could there be some relevance and connections there to underground mountains? Could they be exhaust vents for large underground bases? And they're just telling us they are volcanoes, just like they're telling us that this one is just a nuclear radar, nothing to worry about. It's no secret base here or anything. But anyway, it's got an underground mountain underneath the island of Montauk that comes up. It's its own separate island in a way. Something happened out there, and I am sure of that. And I'm beginning to think I'm sure that some stuff did happen there as well. Maybe some of you might be tending to agree also, if you are paying attention and find this interesting. Even Fagan, who avoided researching the conspiracy theories at Camp Hero, said the place draws people in and it takes a toll. So many people, including me, who spent any time looking into Camp Hero ended up completely different people after, he said. It's a strange coincidence, but I've seen it happen to multiple people. I got so squirrely, I had to leave town for a while, and that is because, did he get too close? Did they know he's getting too close? Did they fuck with his mind? Electromagnetically, all I can say is the imagination is one hell of a machine that can affect you to the point where you no longer know what's true and what isn't. A little bit like where I am now. And there it is, the state park. You can move the map, see where it is for yourself. Sorry if that's making you a little bit sick. And that's it, guys. So thank you for your patience, for sticking with me. But I thought that was a very, very interesting article. It's very, very interesting that it did come out so recently in conjunction with all of this. But hopefully it has whetted your appetite a little bit more to know some more information about Montauk, which is exactly what we're going to do now, where we're going to look a little bit more at some of the reference to Stranger Things and some of the other strange incidents that have alleged to have happened there, including the Montauk Monster. Is it a real life demo dog? You tell me when we come back live after the remaining part of this presentation. I should actually think about making commercials so you could all go and have a smoke break. But anyway, guys, here we are back to some videos which would probably be more interesting than listening to me bush
The Montauk Project is an alleged series of secret United States government projects conducted at Camp Hero or Montauk Air Force Station on Montauk, Long Island, for the purpose of developing psychological warfare techniques and exotic research including time travel. Jacques Vallée describes allegations of the Montauk Project as an outgrowth of stories about the Philadelphia experiment. The history of the Montauk Project story is closely associated with and often believed to originate in the Montauk Project series of books by Preston Nichols. Stories about the Montauk Project have circulated since the early 1980s. According to UFO researcher Jacques Vallée, The Montauk experiment stories seem to have originated with the account of Preston Nichols, who claimed to have recovered repressed memories of his own involvement. Nichols, born May 24, 1946 in Long Island, New York, claims to have degrees in parapsychology, psychology, and electrical engineering, and he has authored a series of books, known as the Montauk Project series, along with Peter Moon, the primary topic of which is alleged activities at Montauk. These center on topics including United States government military experiments in fields such as time travel, teleportation, mind control, contact with alien life, and staging faked Apollo moon landings, framed as developments which followed a successful 1943 Philadelphia experiment. These culminated in a hole ripped in space-time in 1983. The authors have encouraged speculation about the contents. For example, they wrote, "Whether you read this as science fiction or non-fiction, you are in for an amazing story," in their first chapter, describing much of the content as soft facts in a guide for readers, and publishing a newsletter with updates to the story. Some sources report that Nichols claims to have worked on the Montauk Project, and recalls it only through recovery of repressed memories. Others hold that he believes he is periodically abducted to continue his participation against his will. Most treat Nichols' work as fiction. In 2015, Montauk Chronicles, a film adaptation of The Conspiracy featuring Preston Nichols, Al Billick, and Stuart Swerdlow, was released online and on DVD and Blu-ray. The film won the Best Documentary Award at the Philip K. Dick Film Festival in New York City, and has been featured on Coast to Coast AM and The Huffington Post. The Netflix TV series Stranger Things was allegedly inspired by the Montauk Project, and at one time Montauk was used as its working title. In the television series Lost, Daniel Farraday such experiments on Desmond, Miles, and a laboratory rat. The Montauk story also features prominently in Thomas Pynchon's 2013 novel Bleeding Edge. In one of the articles on the SCP Foundation Wiki, there is a heavily censored procedure titled Procedure 110 Montauk.
While millions have enjoyed Stranger Things, what they might not know is that it very well could be based on a true story. My name is Christopher Garitano, and I've been researching the Montauk Project for over 10 years. So I spent almost a decade of having my head filled with these stories, these legends of time travel, mind control, Nazis, aliens. And according to witnesses and alleged survivors, it all happened beneath the Camp Hero Air Force Base in Montauk, New York. According to the official story, the Camp Hero Air Force Base was a place to defend the east coast of the United States against Nazi attack during World War II. But then things get shady because after World War II, the United States recruited Nazi scientists and used them for a variety of things to develop weaponry and technology. And the people allegedly involved in the Montauk Project claim that these same Nazi scientists were brought down to Camp Hero to develop the Montauk Project. The Montauk Project is, according to the stories and the legends, a covert government operation that illegally recruited human subjects, runaway kids, for purposes of mind control, and some of the more elaborate stories are time travel, interstellar travel, interdimensional travel, and reverse engineering of extraterrestrial technology. But the core idea in the Montauk Project was a wrangling of human experiments. And this isn't far from fact. It's not fiction because we know about things like MKUltra, and we know about things like the Holmesburg prison experiments. All of these secret government mind control programs, these things have been proven. The CIA had a program called Project Stargate. Project Stargate was a remote viewing program where they had a group of people who they were training to be powerful psychics. This is a real thing. Our government funded this and actually had some success with it. And so there were hearings in 1995. Bill Clinton actually apologized for some of them.
Thousands of government-sponsored experiments did take place at hospitals, universities, and military bases around our nation. These experiments were kept secret. The United States of America offers a sincere apology to those of our citizens who were subjected to these experiments.
So we know these things happened, and it's not science fiction. And so this is why Stranger Things could be based on a true story.
1990s, a man named Preston Nichols went public and started saying the strangest things. He said he'd been involved with a series of military projects, and after uncovering repressed memories, he said he now remembered working on things such as mind control, teleportation, telepathy, and even time travel. This was all top secret, of course. The experiments he said had taken place at a U.S. military black site in a place called Montauk in New York State. Other people have also come out and said the U.S. government has conducted similar experiments that sound like science fiction. But just how credible are these people, and how does this tie into Stranger Things? Before we get back to Mr. Nichols, we first want to tell you about something called the Philadelphia experiment. You see, Nichols said that the experiments that he took part in were kind of a follow-on from this alleged experiment. We've done a full show on this, so we'll just give you a recap now. As the story goes, while the USA was fighting in World War II, it was developing a ship, but this was no ordinary ship. Called the USS Eldridge, the destroyer was by some accounts out of this world in many respects. It's said in 1943 an experiment took place and the ship just disappeared from the eyes of those who stood by. This was apparently teleportation, and the technology was created by Nikola Tesla. One man said the ship was surrounded by a blue light and then poof, it was gone. But that's not a bad thing to have in a war. How do we know any of this? Well, the man who claimed to be a whistleblower told a writer, and the writer relayed the tale. It was even written that when the ship re-emerged, things hadn't gone so well, as the men were mangled on the ship. Some of them actually fused to the thing. Conspiracy theorists have written that some of those men ended up in mental asylums while others died. The problem is, can we believe this happened on the account of one man, a man who would change his story over his lifetime? Well, now we must talk about another man, and his name was Al Bielek. He claimed that after watching the movie The Philadelphia Experiment, once repressed memories came back to him, and he too now realized that he had worked on these secret projects, and he had also seen a ship teleport. He went further though, saying that after the experiment, he became part of the Montauk project. He claimed that the USA was working on time travel, and indeed, he had been sent to the future himself. He claims to have been on board one ship, and after it disappeared, he awoke in a hospital covered in radiation burns in the year 2137. But that wasn't all. He also said he visited the 28th century and gone as far forward on one journey as 6037. The question again is, do we believe the words of this one man? It's not as if he's ever come forward with any kind of substantial proof. We just have to take his word for it. We should mention a man named Jacques F. Vallée. He wrote a piece called Anatomy of a Hoax, the Philadelphia Experiment 50 years later, in an attempt to better understand why some people were saying such things had happened. His conclusion in some part was that indeed the USA was trying to develop technologies that would make ships difficult to be hit by magnetic weapons, but there was nothing otherworldly about it. The technology wasn't that great at all. He said perhaps this might have planted seeds in people's minds, and that's why folks started talking about disappearing ships. After the war, say conspiracy theorists, the USA started doing things in tune with the TV show Stranger Things. We should say that the original title of the series was actually Montauk, but the Duffer Brothers changed their minds on that one. One of those things was seeking out children with psychic sensitivities and basically taking them from the streets and conducting experiments on them. Now, this is not so over the top because the CIA had a mind control program that definitely did exist, and it was called MKUltra. The CIA wanted to try to figure out how to control someone's mind, and to do this, they did things such as give people the powerful drug LSD. They also tried hypnosis, sleep deprivation, isolation, and forms of torture. It was secret and, as it turned out, very unethical. This is a far cry from experimenting on children who might have the power of telekinesis, though. That's being able to move things with your mind, such as Eleven can do in Stranger Things. It's also very different from telepathy, being able to read someone's mind. There's no evidence that either is possible, but it makes interesting TV. The men who had talked about such things, Bilek and Nichols, both say, like Eleven, young children were strapped into chairs where they would have their psychic abilities tested. This chair in the project was called the Montauk chair. It gets stranger, though, because in the 1940s, a man called Jose Silva did create something called Silva Mind Control. This was supposed to better a child's IQ score, but Silva also thought that it might bring out a child's psychic abilities. This man and his tests did exist. One man named Duncan Cameron claims to have taken part in one of those tests, but then said he was recruited by Men in Black. Cameron claims to have experienced psychic abilities first as a 12-year-old, and later he was made part of the MK Ultra program. He said he was abducted and forced to take part in the Montauk project, and in that Montauk chair, some crazy things happened. We've seen him on YouTube talking about his mind-bending experiences. We should say now that Bilek claims that when his memories came back to him, he remembered that his real name was Ed Cameron, and he was in fact the brother of Duncan Cameron. In one interview, Duncan Cameron said, "I was involved in a number of research projects back in the 70s and 80s that actually created a fixed time loop back to the 40s. He was apparently traumatized by this, as any kid would be, and it took some time to adjust back to normal life. He said he was abducted in total 13 times, groomed by the military to do exactly what they asked of him. On his website, it's written about his time in the chair, saying things such as this. His focused awareness became one with the greater field of consciousness, and his awareness became one with his surroundings. The linear sequence of time changed, space unfolded, and events happened synchronously." This is what Nichols wrote about this talented child. The first experiment was called the seeing eye. With a lock of a person's hair or other appropriate object in his hand, Duncan could concentrate on the person and be able to see as if he were seeing through their eyes, hearing through their ears, and feeling through their body. He could actually see through other people anywhere on the planet. You can watch interviews with both Nichols and Cameron, and the two discuss these secret projects, talking about the teleporting ships under the Rainbow Project, aka the Philadelphia Project. They also talk about the Phoenix Project, which was essentially a mind control program which also started in World War II. If you read the comments below on one video on YouTube, you'll find many people believe them, and some people claim to know others that were part of these projects. Here's an example comment. "These experiments are still going on in sub-basements beneath the east end of Long Island, and I intend to prove it. These experiments never stopped. They just hid them beneath the ground. Long Island is a test lab for the shadow government's projects." In one of his books, Nichols went so far as to say that during one experiment on the young Cameron, a kind of monster was created by his subconscious, and that monster caused havoc on the base. According to that story, the monster wouldn't quit causing trouble until the chair was destroyed and the experiment stopped. This is how Nichols described the creation of the monster. Duncan let loose a monster from his subconscious, and the transmitter actually portrayed a hairy monster. It was big, hairy, and nasty. It showed up somewhere on the base. It would eat everything it could, and it smashed everything in sight. Now, you're really seeing how these stories acted as inspiration for the TV series. But let's not forget that these men are all dead serious. Nichols wrote that there were other subjects, all young people, and he called them the Montauk Boys. Others have investigated the stories of these men, and some are not convinced they're making it up. One writer said that he's visited the creepy base, and indeed, there were underground tunnels and bunkers. He told the Huffington Post, "At first, I didn't believe their stories. These men have not benefited financially. They didn't gain anything from this, and they've endured ridicule as they maintain their story." Thanks to that story, we found another man who claims that he was one of the Montauk Boys, and his name is Stuart Swerdlow. This is something he said about his time at the base and in the chair. Beatings, a lot of torture, electrical shock, burials, near drownings. They'd bring you to the point of death, and then they would save you, and the person doing this would be your rescuer and would say, "I'm the one that saved you, and remember that," and that became your handler. He said the experiments didn't just involve gifted kids, but sometimes kids who were orphans or addicted to drugs would be snatched from the streets. He said a lot more kids could have been involved. In interviews, he has said things such as this: "The aim was to fracture your mind so they could program you. They would change the temperature from very hot to very cold, starve you, then overfeed you, and they loved to hold your head underwater until you nearly drowned. This was effective. It makes a person likely to listen to and obey their rescuer." We went to his Facebook page where he calls himself a gifted hyperspace intuitive, and he says he can also move his consciousness beyond time and space. He claims to be a clairvoyant. He sees into the future. and he can even, in his own mind, see auric fields and personal archetypes, as well as read DNA sequences and mind patterns. He's claimed that during these experiments he once visited Mars, and on another occasion he was sent back to biblical times. We should tell you that Cameron passed away in 2019. Nichols and Bilek are also dead. Swerdlow is alive and well. Many of you, after hearing this, will no doubt question the veracity of these stories. You might ask if clairvoyance or other special psychic abilities exist. We had to look around for some proof that they could exist, but it seems most experts believe anyone who claims to have these abilities likely only has some mental issues, such as schizophrenia. In some forms, this could not be as bad as to make life difficult for that person, and at times they may just have a feeling that they have psychic abilities and just carry on a normal life. To date, there is no peer-reviewed scientific evidence published anywhere that proves that people can have these abilities, but the claims have happened throughout history, and you might even say people who claim to have spoken to a higher power are not too much different from the people we've discussed today. People in groups with a bit of cash behind them have even said they give quite a lot of money to anyone who could prove their psychic abilities when being observed formally. One American magician said he'd lay down $1 million if anyone could do that, and you know what? He's never paid out any.
Time-traveling brothers reveal what the distant future will be like. Time travel is a fantastical concept that most would consider the stuff of science fiction. While the idea that someone can journey through time and change the course of history is terrifyingly tantalizing, it's simply just not thought to be possible. But what if it is, and it already happened? If you ask Al Bielek and his brother Duncan Cameron, they'd tell you that time travel is possible because they've done it. Their apparent journey into the distant future allegedly took place in 1943, and they've got some evidence to back up their story. Whether or not you believe their story is up to you, but they definitely had some very eye-opening things to say when they, quote-unquote, returned. It's fascinating to think about the possibility of journeying to another era, but most would agree that time travel isn't real. Or is it? In 1943, a man named Al Bielek and his brother, Duncan Cameron, apparently traveled to the distant future. Upon their return, they had some very interesting things to tell the world. Al and Duncan's story start in 1943 on Montauk, Long Island. There, the Montauk Air Force Station was allegedly psychological warfare techniques that included studying the concept of time travel. The brothers were aboard the USS Eldridge, a top-secret naval ship that could supposedly turn itself and teleport around the world. If that wasn't crazy enough already, Al and Duncan claimed that they jumped off the ship late one evening, and instead of landing in the water, they traveled to the year 2137. When they arrived, they spent 6 full weeks lying in hospital beds, recovering from intense radiation poisoning. There was no medical staff at the hospital, and they had no clue where the building was located. Apparently, the futuristic medical system that was treating their injuries used vibrations and light. Sounds nuts, right? Well, there were televisions lining the room that were playing educational and news programming, and that was where the brothers learned some very shocking things about the world. The first thing they learned was that climate change had significantly altered the geography of the United States. The water level had risen around Florida and reduced it to the panhandle only. Likewise, Atlanta, Georgia was now only 3 miles from the ocean. The Mississippi River had become an inland waterway, and the Great Lakes had all merged into one massive body of water. The 3 brothers were also shocked to learn that the Earth's magnetic poles had started to shift. Thankfully, there was an artificial pole structure that was built to prevent the collapse and reversal of the North and South poles, which would have destroyed all life on the planet. War had also broken out all across the globe. The Russians went to war with China, and the United States was involved in a devastating conflict with several European countries. A number of major U.S. cities were destroyed, and the infrastructure of the government completely collapsed. One of the most startling pieces of information the brothers supposedly learned was that the entire world's population had been reduced to 300 million people, with the United States housing 50 million of them. Now, here's where the brothers' story gets even more bizarre. After spending 6 weeks in the hospital bed in 2137, Al claims he inexplicably left his brother behind and traveled to the year 2749, where he remained for 2 whole years. Here, he described great floating cities that could be moved to different parts of the Earth. He also said that everything was controlled by a synthetic intelligence computer system that ran the entire world. No form of government existed, and a huge crystalline floating computer structure communicated with people telepathically. The society was completely socialistic, and every living person had their basic needs for survival taken care of. After Al's time in 2749, he transported back to 2137 to pick up his brother in the hospital, and the two of them returned to 1943. Many people called this entire story a hoax, but Al and Duncan have sworn that everything they told people was true. What do you think? Some of it sounds...
These are the chronicles of cold visitors from space and the evil of man.
Hi everybody, my name's Christopher, and I'm the creator of Montauk Chronicles. I'm making this video mainly to express my gratitude for all the people who pre-ordered the film, and everybody who's shown their support and interest in this project. Another reason why I'm making this is to kind of explain the slight delay we've had, and I'll give you a little bit of history on the project first. Montauk Chronicles, this entire situation began for me in '06, and I shot an entirely different film than the one you're about to see. That film screened around the world, different places, different venues, and a couple of film festivals throughout 2012. Actually, the first screening was December of 2011. It was a feature-length film, 85 minutes, and it was a good film, but there were some things that I feel I was only scratching the surface of this conspiracy. Another reason was technology was changing while I was making the picture, and other things became available to me. So really, it was a combination of things that I ultimately decided to remake the picture, which is a movie that I'm very happy with, which is the movie you're about to see. This movie is almost 2 hours long, and it was around December of 2013 that I was pretty happy with it and ready to close it up and make my January 14th deadline for a release date. Until late December, a man contacted me who claimed that he was one of the original Montauk boys in the late stages.
We would go to Camp Hero, school visit, on a field trip, and we would be separate from the other kids. They would take us separate sometimes, bring us to places where they wouldn't go. They had hatchways. They would ask you, are you ready? You know, one time they asked me, do you want to go down? And I was scared once when I was really sure. I was like, no, I don't want to go down there.
So they singled out a group.
Yeah.
They took you to Camp Hero.
Yeah.
Now, the movie is already full of content regarding people's experiences in the alleged Montauk Project. But this man intrigued me, and I had the opportunity to interview him. And the things he said were quite incredible. And he did claim that when he was a child, Alfred Bielig, amongst a few other people, brought him to Camp Hero under false pretenses and led him down a pathway and then ultimately through a hatchway in a secret room. So I challenged him to show me where this was. And you'll see in the film, ultimately, there is a structure similar, almost exactly the way he explained it, in the exact location. Now, adding these things to an already finished movie wasn't an easy task, and I had hoped to get it done a little sooner, but when you're adding things to a story, and it was a very solid story, I mean, this is what I really focused on for most of the year, outside of all the great reenactment sequences and the movie sequences. I really focused on the story. And when you're adding something to an already solid story, to incorporate it properly, you have to make adjustments throughout. It has to fit. And this is what we've been doing, and it's really good now. It's just about to the point now where we have something called a picture lock, where we can go in now and make only slight adjustments to color before we go to the ultimate sound mix. I also wanted to explain a few things in regard to the extras on the disc. There's so many things here, hours of content. I'm so excited to deliver this to you. Anybody has the slightest interest in the Montauk project or the Montauk conspiracy, so to speak, is going to have a field day with the extras on this disc. There's several documentaries outside of the main feature, and there are hours of extended interviews with every subject from the film. And that's everybody from Stuart Swerdlow, Alfred Bielek, and Preston Nichols, to Dr. Barry Taft, who's a parapsychologist, to Lee Spiegel, who's one of the greatest paranormal journalists in the world. We're creating a special edition poster. They're going to be signed and numbered, and these are going to be a gift to everyone who pre-ordered the picture. So thank you so much for your interest in this project. I'm overwhelmed with how many people truly are anticipating this picture, and I'm confident that this is the ultimate Montauk movie.
It was October 1943. The United States government authorized an experiment that would render its ships undetectable by radar. The experiment took place on a ship in Philadelphia Harbor.
Generators activated, sir.
For 41 years, the government denied it ever happened.
I don't believe this.
The Eldridge has vanished.
Of course she has. She's radar invisible.
No, sir. She's really vanished.
But one ship did disappear, and two of the crew suddenly find themselves in the present.
Maybe all this isn't real. You're telling me this is my imagination? You think the Navy knows what they're doing? You saw the guys on the boat. This wasn't supposed to happen, Jimmy.
Jimmy, whatever it is, it's after us.
Michael Pere.
Somehow we got moved in time. This time, it's not ours. 1943 was yesterday for me.
Nancy Allen.
What sort of experiment is it? Is it some kind of secret thing? Is that it?
Well, all that stuff I told the doctors back there, about time in 1943. Do you believe it?
I believe that you believe it.
And Bobby DiCicco.
Don't leave me there, Davey. I can't go through this again.
There it is. Now the government needs the one man who can stop the experiment.
Stop it, but I believe that you can. He's lying, David. I wish to God I were.
I gotta go.
Now look, communication ceases when you enter the vortex. We won't be able to help you.
The Philadelphia Experiment.
This man said he traveled to the year 2749, and he made some disturbing claims about the future. At the height of World War II, brothers Ale Bielek and Duncan Cameron were drafted into a very important government mission. Sat aboard the USS Eldridge while docked at Philadelphia, the two had to monitor the tests of a new scientific invention. But by some freak occurrence, the pair went on a journey beyond anyone's wildest imagination. Now, one of the most prevailing ideas in speculative fiction is that of time travel. In 1895, H.G. Wells released The Time Machine, which detailed a Victorian inventor's quest into the 802nd century. Since then, humanity's been obsessed with whether the idea of traversing time and witnessing what our future holds is possible. While the majority of people see time travel as science fiction, some have claimed that it could become a reality. For instance, the late physicist Stephen Hawking speculated that it could be possible someday for man to travel through time. However, there are those who claim that these journeys have actually already happened. By many accounts, Al Bielek was an unusual child. Apparently born in 1927, the boy could recite amazing knowledge in school, which led to the nickname Walking Encyclopedia. Moreover, he reportedly had genius levels of recollection. For instance, he claimed to remember and understand a conversation overheard at the age of 9 months. And yet the most remarkable aspects of Bielek didn't come forward until after his 60th birthday. Yes, in 1988, he watched a film named The Philadelphia Experiment. Originally released in 1984, the Stuart Raffle-directed sci-fi began on the decks of the USS Eldridge in the Second World War. Wishing to hide their ships, U.S. Navy officials concocted a device to make them invisible to radar. Watching the film unfold, Bielek saw scientists test out a device on the Eldridge. However, the contraption worked too well. Rather than taking the ship out of sight, the experiment had instead transported its crew to the future of 1984. Based on urban legend, the Philadelphia Experiment was a fantastical tale for most who saw it. And even its original writer, John Carpenter, admitted that the story was absolute bullshit in a 2016 chat with Justin Bean. But for Bielek, there was something about the film that ran uncomfortably close to real life. Bielek had flashbacks to something akin to what he'd seen on screen. Before his very eyes, he claimed, appeared visions of a shady government experiment and encounters too vivid to be imagined. Was Bielek losing his mind, or were the sights he was seeing genuine? Racked with uncertainty, Bielek searched for ways to unlock the secrets embedded in his mind. And by undergoing different New Age treatments, the amnesiac found a host of long-buried memories returning to him. Weirdly, piece by piece, Bielek began to unravel a supposed truth, not only about himself, but about the space-time continuum. Initially, perhaps, the most shocking revelation to Bielek was that Bielek apparently wasn't his real name at all, as he came to believe he was actually born Edward Cameron in 1916. Furthermore, the people he'd come to know as his parents were only legal guardians assigned to raise him by government officials. In regards to his real family, Bielek had a biological brother named Duncan, whom he was now separated from. Make sense so far? Well then, let's continue. So the Philadelphia Experiment, as Bielek claimed, was completely real, and he'd been part of it. Following his revelation, the conspiracy theorist took time piecing together the fragments of his shattered past. Then, at a 1990 Mutual UFO Network, MUFON, conference in Texas, Bielek came forward with what he believed was the truth. Standing in front of the audience that day, Bielek stated that he was a survivor of the Philadelphia Experiment. Both he and his brother enlisted in the project during World War II, although it began around 1931, and they were both on board the USS Eldridge, he insisted, when tests were carried out in 1943. According to Bielek, the project, which was intended to hide U.S. ships from Nazi U-boats, involved some great minds. Of note, the scientists included John Hutchinson, John von Neumann, and Nikola Tesla. But ultimately, the group would allegedly create something more revolutionary than invisibility. By 1940, the team reportedly had already achieved some success with a smaller class of ship, and 3 years later, they were ready to try it on a larger vessel, the USS Eldridge, in Philadelphia. Nevertheless, what was supposed to be the final test, conducted on July 22nd, encountered what Bielek called a serious problem. Returning after 15 minutes of invisibility, the ship was intact. However, its occupants were suffering from delirium and nausea. Despite von Neumann's plea for more time, the Navy demanded another test the following month. And so Bielek and Duncan braced themselves for a further go. But they didn't realize it would end with a voyage into the unknown. When the switch was flipped, a flash of blinding blue light shone out, and the ship totally vanished. 4 hours later, the Eldridge snapped back into existence, but with grotesque ramifications to its crew. When officials inspected the vessel, they found 5 sailors stuck in the ship's metal flooring, and those lucky enough to still be alive had apparently gone insane. Moreover, Bielek and Duncan Cameron were nowhere to be found. What allegedly happened to the brothers is beyond most people's comprehension. As soon as they realized something was wrong, Bielik and Duncan both jumped overboard. But instead of landing in the waters of Philadelphia in 1943, the pair hit the shore of Montauk, New York. And instead of being the 1940s, they were actually now in 1983, 40 years after their experiment was conducted. As soon as the brothers materialized on the shore, they were swarmed by guards and patrol helicopters. And after being led into a complex, the pair arrived at an underground level where they met an elderly man. Remarkably, the individual introduced himself as John von Neumann, the person who had apparently sent them through time 40 years before. Subsequently, von Neumann attempted to explain to the brothers the reality of their situation. According to Bielik, at this point in time, the pair were on the grounds of the Phoenix Project, a secret government program aimed at harnessing time travel. There, scientists had somehow connected with the energy from the Philadelphia experiment, creating a hole in hyperspace, which sucked the Eldridge in. That wasn't the worst of the pair's problems, though, for you see, the Eldridge was still stuck inside a continually expanding hyperspace bubble, claimed Bielik, and its growth could eventually even destroy the Earth. In order to stop its spread, then, someone had to return to the ship and destroy the equipment on board. And Bielik and Duncan, it seemed, were the men for the job. So for the greater good, the brothers accepted the mission, and soon after, they were sent through the fabric of space and time once more. There's a slight feeling when you're going through space-time. Bielik told Paula Harris in 2005, the first trip you make can be quite nauseating, and after that, you sort of get used to it. Back on the deck of the USS Eldridge, Bielik and Duncan set about completing the assignment at hand. Using axes, the two demolished the generators and circuitry central to the vessel's unlinking in time and space. Soon, the ship began to stabilize, for the rift in space and time began to contract, and the Eldridge returned once again to 1943. So far, Bielik's fantastical testimony could harness incredulity in some. Of particular note, an electrician named Edward Dudgeon, who worked on the Philadelphia experiment, asserted that no time travel took place. In fact, the generators, he said, were on board the Eldridge to make the ship invisible to radar only, not physically invisible. But for those still tuned into the much-proclaimed time traveler's account, the story was about to get wilder. In the year 2000, a decade after MUFON, Bielik elaborated on his and Duncan Cameron's return to the Eldridge. And what he described was staggering beyond belief. On that note, let's find out more. Well, waking up in a hospital bed, Bielik recalled being in an unfamiliar place. To his side lay his brother Duncan, and in front of him was a television set. As Bielik would come to learn, this wasn't the world of 1943, nor had they returned to 1983. Rather, they were in the distant future of 2137. Confused? No? Then let's continue. As the story goes, through some freak occurrence, the pair had once again traveled through hyperspace. As a result, they required medical treatment for radiation burns inflicted on their journey. All in all, the brothers spent 6 weeks in this medical facility of the future. Nevertheless, they learned a lot about the world of 2137 from inside its walls. First of all, Bielik noticed an immediate change in the Earth's medical equipment. Instead of gauze and medicine, ultra-advanced light and vibration energy was used to heal the sick. Furthermore, television stations of the future only broadcast news, history, and geography shows. I don't recall there was a single soap opera on the air, Bielik remembered. While watching these programs, Bielik realized that serious geographical changes had happened to the Earth. Between the years 2000 and 2025, he claimed, the United States had lost parts of its landmass. Most severely hit was the southern part of the country. Atlanta was now near the coast, and Florida was gone, save for its panhandle. But the changes to the world didn't stop at geographical level. Indeed, the United States, which was now under military rule, had long ceased to exist as a nation-state. Moreover, the globe's population had decreased by an alarming number. As Bielik alleged, there were only 300 million people left on Earth in the 22nd century. That's a drastic reduction from the 7.7 billion we have around the world today. Now, the reason for this, Bielik argued, was due to a global conflict in the early 21st century. In the ensuing war between Eastern and Western forces, entire cities were decimated, and centralized governments became no more. Meanwhile, radioactive contamination left over from these battles was creating severe problems for the conflict survivors. At this point in the story, Bielik had reportedly journeyed between 2 entire centuries, and yet the time traveler's voyage was still far from over. After spending time recuperating in the 22nd century, Bielik once again inexplicably shot forward to another point in the Earth's existence. Yes, if you can believe it, he found himself in the distant future of 2749. Oddly, Bielik could not account for why he alone was thrust even further this time. Although, happily, the world was far more Elysian than the one he just left. Since becoming devastated by nuclear war, civilization had recovered to an incredible degree. Now, 60 years on, society had rebuilt itself into a utopia. In the 28th century, Bielik claimed humanity had made significant advances in technology and had mastered the mechanics of anti-gravity. Remembering his journey, he described seeing 2.5-mile-high floating cities suspended on platforms. Untethered from the ground, these metropolises could travel the surface of the planet just as free as a jumbo jet. Astonishingly, he said mankind's fate was no longer in human hands. Instead of governing themselves, each city had its own artificial intelligence which governed the day-to-day needs of its inhabitants. As a result, things we view today as a necessity, like money or labor, were made completely immaterial, apparently. In Bielik's own words, the world of tomorrow was deeply socially conscious. To this end, wars had become obsolete because countries had disbanded their armed forces. Moreover, there were no funds to fight over either. After eliminating the need for money, this future civilization worked on a credit system which provided everyone with enough to get by. Sounds too good to be true, perhaps. All in all, Bielik claimed he spent 2 years living in the 28th century. Then, just as mysteriously as he had appeared, the Voyager traveled back to the year 2137. And upon reuniting with his brother, Bielik returned through the hyperspace wormhole that they came through. But just when you thought the story couldn't get any weirder, well, it did. Because although Bielik found himself unharmed in Montauk in 1983, his brother wasn't so lucky. Due to a freak occurrence brought on by time travel, Duncan began to age phenomenally fast and died soon afterwards. In an effort to save his brother's consciousness, though, Bielik persuaded his parents to conceive another child. And, wait for it, their child received Duncan Cameron's thoughts and memories, said Bielik. After his journey between centuries, Bielik claimed that he remained on the Montauk project, working with von Neumann on time travel. But they weren't alone. They also had the reincarnated Duncan's psychic abilities. But soon, allegedly, the military became spooked by what Bielik had witnessed of the future. Consequently, the decision was made to de-age him, delete his memories, and transport him to 1927 under a new persona, as you do. Of course, whether or not Bielik's version of events can be believed is really up to the individual. However, it's fair to say that even the most gullible of us would have problems accepting his account at face value. Crucially, in the 75 years since the Philadelphia experiment supposedly took place, the U.S. Navy has never confirmed its existence.
Today we will be exploring one of the internet's most controversial mysteries, namely this picture here framing the notorious Montauk monster. This is all things creepy. Let's begin. Our story begins in Montauk, New York, where a group of friends found this carcass washed up on the shore. Naturally, its odd appearance caused many questions to be raised, and they quickly notified the local newspaper. This is when things got interesting. Speculation instantly arose. You see, not far from where this carcass was found is Plum Island, the site for an animal testing lab specializing in diseases. Of course, the fact that this laboratory is isolated on an island leads the more skeptical or conspiratorial to think that maybe there is more going on there than the government initially leads us to believe. So of course this then opens the floodgates for wild speculation. Perhaps this is some kind of experiment gone wrong. Maybe they dumped it and it floated down here. I've even seen some people claim that this is a case of animal hybridization, since at first glance the creature resembles no living animal. But let's take a look at this image for a moment. Clearly the carcass is quite heavily decayed. Not so much that it is rendered to bone, there is still some hair and skin left. However, the face has rotted away and corroded. We have no idea how much of it is being consumed. Considering this has probably washed ashore, the multitude of aquatic creatures that have gained access to the softer parts could have almost entirely altered the appearance of this animal. So it really is a mystery. Based on what we can see from the image, it seems to have the general body structure and skeletal frame of a raccoon. Of course, we would have to use our imagination and consider that the snout has literally decayed or fallen away. And of course, much of the coloration has been bleached out or simply vanished due to deterioration in the water. I've seen some claim that this is some sort of pig. I'm sure if it was from the laboratory, pigs are often used for experimentation, so that is of course possible. They're also a common livestock animal. However, we need to pay attention to the general body plan here. Clearly, this creature has quite a lot of mobility in its upper arm, something something that most animals, most four-legged animals, don't possess. Of course, raccoons use their hands to pick things up. They have quite mobile upper arms and so would fit the bill for this creature here. However, even then, it's a stretch. Clearly, this animal has been deteriorated beyond recognition. Now, of course, a simple solution to that would be take DNA samples, and since the government have clearly got a hold of this, why is this not proven? Why is there not empirical evidence of what animal this is? That's where things get interesting. The body went missing. It was not ever collected, or so they say. Now, of course, this could be due to negligence. However, it does make things a little more interesting. Maybe this is indeed a case of animal experimentation gone wrong. The government obviously wouldn't want any of that getting out, and of course, they could quite easily get rid of the evidence if they so desired. So, that's where this legendary figure of cryptozoology comes from, the Montauk monster. Most likely a rotting raccoon carcass that fell in the water, but possibly something a little more suspicious.
This radar was initially key to the mind control experiments, but around 1974, they began using something called the Montauk chair, which, from what I read, was based on alien technology. Anyway, they hooked this chair device to the radar system so it could harness the electromagnetic energy to amplify psychic powers, like remote viewing, telepathy, and there was one psychic who became the project's most advanced. Not only was he able to create objects out of thin air, but he could even open gateways into space and time when hooked into the chair. Although eventually he helped sabotage the project.
Guys, we are back, I think, almost. I believe we are. So there, that was it. I still had a couple of seconds. I think I prematurely kicked in the mic, but that was it, guys. That was my Montauk project presentation, and judging by some of the comments in there was some stuff that maybe blew your mind and possibly opened your eyes wide. So there you go. I hope you enjoyed that, and there is the thumbnail. And let me just see if I can do something quickly. Yes, I can. So as you can hear, hopefully all being well in the background, I can't check the volume, but you should have the Stranger Things music playing in the background there. So that was the real life Stranger Things, and we still got the music playing, I believe. Thank you, Nancy, but as I said, you always say everything I do is good, even if it isn't good. Is the music getting distracting? We can always stop that if need be. So let's get rid of that for you there. So as I said, that was a little presentation that I put together for you. I actually started working on that a little bit yesterday and finished up today, and tomorrow we will be doing our JFK special, but tonight we're just over 2 hours. We are going to go on a little bit longer. Okay, sorry about the music. I thought I could add the soundtrack. Maybe that was what the issues were at the beginning. You can't have the mic and additional music. But anyway, as I said, guys, those were some real life stories. Not saying all of those stories are real. And again, we said take a little bit with a pinch of salt. But where there is no smoke, there is no fire, as they say. You can still hear me though, right? You can hear what I'm saying, hopefully. Okay, I'm not crazy. That's debatable, Nancy. Very, very debatable. But that was the real life. Hopefully now, as I said, we are going to go on a little bit longer. As it is a Saturday night, we might go on to at least midnight our time here in Toronto. Wherever you are, that might differ, various time zones, but as I said, it is the weekend, so we are going to go on a little bit longer now, and as I said, we are going to probably look at a little bit of the comparisons of what we just saw to what we can see in the movie. And unfortunately I haven't got any sort of props or stuff to pull in from Stranger Things, also because we don't necessarily want to be targeting copyright strikes, which is a little bit of a risk you do run, and I have been experiencing. Hold on a second, I've got something in the way there that's causing me that's bad. Hang on. But they have got a couple of videos blocked and removed because of copyright strikes. But Stranger Things, as I said, is based very much on what we just saw, and what we just saw is very much the ingredients of Stranger Things. So is this a case of life imitating art, or is art creating our life? Fiction prepares us for our reality, as I've said many times before. And you know, as I said, we sort of tied in today's show with where we left off with the Philadelphia experiment. Sorry, I've got a little bit of a brain fart going on there. And of course, the project, that particular experiment, was part and parcel of Tesla's technology. And once they sort of finished and carried out that experimentation, then they took all of that findings to Montauk and continued to work from 1943 to 1983. Now, what is very interesting in this, because if you can remember at the beginning of that presentation, they were talking about that during the Cold War, the site was used as a nuclear deterrent early warning system, give Americans advanced knowledge that an inbound missile strike coming. But it was decommissioned in 1983. Now, in 1983, that was pretty much the height of the Cold War, between 83, 84, 85. That's when Star Wars project went up. That's when, you know, really and truly we were thinking that the Ruskies and the Americans were going to go at it and launch all their ejaculate nuclear arsenal on one another in a nuclear bukkake, I guess, of Armageddon. But it never ever come to be. But it's very interesting that a nuclear early warning system and deterrent system would be closed down at the height of the Cold War, when you'd probably need that technology and equipment most of all. Predictive programming, there's a lot, especially over the decade. Well, there's a reason they call it television programming, Anika, as I've said many times before, and it programs us one way or another, either if that is programmatic behavior into how we should behave and act in society, or whether it does indeed predict us or give us forewarning and knowledge of impending false flag psychological operations, as is the case with 9/11. Now, again, looking at contemporary fiction, where can we depict where our future's heading, which is what I've put a couple of fiction decoded episodes up recently of contemporary shows, Utopia, Upload, and Years After Years, and I've got a couple others lined up. Now, another show that we mentioned during that stream was Eureka. Now, Eureka is a very fascinating, it's a very quirky sort of sitcom-y type show, but there is an awful lot of Montauk hidden within, and this is it, like Stranger Things isn't alone in this kind of sort of theme, although Stranger Things does kind of sort of bring a little bit of the horror in the demonic sense in it. But Eureka was a quirky, cute little show that once again sort of depicts this little small town out in the middle of nowhere, but everybody that lives in the town is a genius. And within the town is a secret laboratory that is not only overseen by the local sheriff and police department, it's overseen by the DOD, and there's also some sort of DARPA equivalent in and on the scene. But what they do there is everything, you know, this was within the show of Eureka, but pretty much what they're doing is conducting out experiments like everything we've just seen: time travel, interportal dimension stuff, transfers, vortexes, wormholes, you name it, it's all going in. But it's set, it's again because it takes place in centres around a very, very small town, very similar to that in Stranger Things. Hawkins is a small town out in Indiana, you know, where sort of pretty much everybody knows everybody and everybody's gossiping about each other's business and daily routines, that they don't really notice the fact that this power plant is conducting suspicious governmental atrocities and secrets. Right, but again, Eureka was very interesting because all the inhabitants were specially selected. It's kind of like because they were so smart, the sort of smart going ons that the labs didn't really phase them. And I mean, it is a quirky little show. It's not like eye-opening, oh my god, it's revealing the most groundbreaking secrets, but is it revealing some secrets nonetheless? And there are some very stark similarities to that, which was conducted at Montauk, out there in Long Island, New York State. Sorry, I lost my train of thought quickly then. But it's a show that I haven't watched in its entirety. I caught a few episodes here and then, and it does sort of spark my interest. So maybe as the darker months come down, I might get into that. But another show which I actually prefer an awful lot more than Stranger Things. I can't sort of talk about Stranger Things without mentioning Granite Flats. Now, if or not you've seen Granite Flats, it's probably unlikely because I don't think it got put to Netflix, but it didn't get shown on like network TVs or cable TVs. Because it was created for the Mormon network. So Mormon television programming is very, very restrained. Like everything has to be PG-13. You know, PG-13 is R-rated in Mormon communities. So there's sort of a lot of wholesome values in it. There's no sort of gratuitous sex, nudity, smoking, drinking, drug taking, anything like that. But Granite Flats is very much the precursor for Stranger Things, with the exception it doesn't have super-powered children in it, but it does have a bunch of kids that sort of unravel a mystery at the local airbase. And again, Granite Flats is one of these very small little out in the middle of nowhere towns where it's a tight-knit community. Everybody knows everybody, but there's a military base there and a military hospital there. And the military hospital is carrying out MK Ultra experimentation, and in particular they are controlling one of the airmen, and it shows how he develops a relationship with one of the nurses and how the employees at the hospital were used eventually as the candidate's trigger. And this is what Nancy mentioned earlier, is this where places went to go? Yeah, once you got abducted and you had been selected or abducted or even bred for experimentation and for programming, then you get introduced to your handler, and that's what you see in Stranger Things in season 1. Al calls the white-haired gentleman, I don't know his name, she refers to him as Papa, and Papa is her handler. But in Granite Flats, there's this US airman that develops his handler relationship with one of the nurse there, and she kind of, it shows how they're experimenting on him and how they're using different methods, and eventually they figure out the fact that they can just record her voice, and once they've got the tapes of her voice giving the commands, they can play these to him over the phone, and he will then go out and act on those instructions, and eventually he is given the instructions to kill his handler, which he does. Which is very, very interesting. There's also a moment sort of where they reveal that this individual that takes place in Granite Flats that is getting the mind control Monarch MK Ultra programming isn't the only one. And at the sort of time that this revelation comes out within the show, it's like, you know, he's not the only one. We've got others. If it doesn't work with him, it doesn't matter. And sort of before this secret agent delivers this message within the show, the news report comes on that a certain JFK had been assassinated, and then the guy sort of like smiles and walks off, which is why I mention it as N, because tomorrow we're going to be looking at JFK tomorrow. But Granite Flats is a wonderful show. It ran for 3 series. You guys will love it because some of you are a little bit older than me, and I think it was Abel, our new Thrift fam, a member there, said she's 57. Well, I'm 50 years old, and most of us are Gen Xers or some baby boomers here, so we're not exactly spring chickens. So I'm guessing by some of your comments that you were making through the chat there, you found some like-minded folks, and the fact that you are still here at the end of the presentation and active must mean you found something at the thrift store you like. Now, Maiden, you were talking about the, of course you need a handler, all women need a handler, but they're too proud to admit it. But anyway, let's not go into those realms. You were talking about the babies being bred. Now, in regards of Monarch programming, and with where Monarch programming comes from is from Monarch butterflies. Now, we mentioned this yesterday and quite a few times over the last few weeks, because we're talking a lot about MK Ultra, mind control, and all of this stuff. And you can't kind of really talk about Monarch and MK Ultra without coming to Montauk in sort of something else I did mention through the stream, that sort of all roads seem to revolve at some point through Montauk, and Tesla seems to have his finger in all the Montauk related pies. And I haven't forgotten about the building, Abel, but what was I talking about? Sorry, we know you're older than 57, Nancy, but the babies, right? So Monarch programming. So it takes 6 generations of butterflies to make the journey from Canada to Brazil every winter, and then it takes another 6 generations to return the flights. 12 generations in total for the whole journey, but the butterfly that leaves never makes the final destination, and neither do the butterflies that leave the final destination to return have ever known where they're going. But the butterflies go back and forth, and they believe that the knowledge of their destination in a navigational system is passed down through DNA. And this is something we mentioned the other day, that Judy Bell mentioned, that when her daughter went into labor, she went into labor, or she started experience labor, and I was explaining, well, this is a little bit how the Monarch, you know, your DNA is passed into your offspring's DNA and her offspring's DNA. So it'd be only sort of kind of conceivable to think that, yeah, maybe you would experience the symptoms of something that essentially is part of you. So what they would also do with some of these children, and not just women that they children, like children were the best because their minds weren't as advanced as human, and they were a little bit free and easier to mold. It's kind of like sort of dough for pizza. When it's fresh, you can make a nice round base, but you leave it out for a few, it's kind of, you have to punch it and stretch it, and it doesn't quite stay the same. But some of the women that they captured, which they did capture in experiment on, they bred because what they wanted to do is program the mothers and then see if the child would have the programming passed down them through the DNA. So some of these poor little individuals, which was the case with 11, and she eventually went off and found her mother, and they told her mother that the child died in childbirth, and the mother was fucked up. But that was based on very, very real evidence. Now, there is a lady here in Canada, because once it shut down in 83, as I mentioned in the chat there, it was redirected to a hospital in Montreal. Now, I don't know if McGill University, is that the one we're talking about? Are you ahead of me on that? But I have got some footage that I wanted to put in tonight about the Montreal Montauk, and kind of wish I did, to be quite honest, but it was at the hour and 40 mark already. I'm like, how long should I make this? It's already too long at the minute. Are people gonna be interested? But I kind of wish now, because I think that's probably the most attention some of you guys have paid to one of these presentations all week, and seems to have been the one that really kind of did get some people's eyes opening and like, geez, is that real? But that was what happened once it sort of closed down in 83, and as I said, that was suspicious. If it was supposedly, the guise of it was a nuclear deterrent and early warning system, then at the height of the Cold War, that was when it would be needed most. But they relocated, and I guess sort of funding it out in, into Canada kind of makes it international, and it's no longer sort of within the realms of jurisdiction of the United States, if you get me. And again, by sort of contracting it out to a government contractor, then again the sort of government releases liability of what's going on. Well, no, we just give them the contract. We had no idea they were brainwashing kids down there in the basement and opening interdimensional portals. But again, Abel, something I've been mentioning a lot lately, and a little bit of a theory that I've been coming across in thinking to myself, maybe not just myself, maybe other people shared it, is that the Trump Tower in New York City is constructed out of all the things pretty much that you would need to build a Tesla tower. I keep talking about this all the time. It has its own running water system on the end there. Lots of water features and waterfalls. A lot of ceramics, a lot of copper, a lot of brass, a lot of marble. All the things that act as conductors and insulators, grounding system and cooling the system. And my theory is it's a TARDIS. It's a time machine and a Tesla tower. And with regards to Stranger Things as well, something I've been mentioning about is like the theory of the 1980s movies were giving us a hidden message. There's cryptic clues. And I kind of believe the ones that I'm sort of putting together in this mystery are gremlins. And gremlins, I believe, are not necessarily little goblins from other realms or dimensions or mogwais that you feed. I believe that the gremlins represent kind of electromagnetic frequencies, and we talked about how channel surfing become a thing that we used to do late night after TV, and we become couch potatoes, and potatoes are essentially a conductor of, they turn into a battery if you do the science experiment, and that's what happened to people. They sat there, and this is where a little bit of Monarch programming comes into play, because we sat there with our remotes watching late night cable, the electromagnetic frequencies coming into our brains, and now the offspring of Gen Xers that sat channel surfing now do the same with their phones, but they don't have a channel, they just got it there right in front of our faces. Right, yeah, I could go since I got Uncle Trump's papers, but anyway, gremlins represents the electromagnetic frequencies that if you feed them after midnight, that's when they get worse. So if you watch primetime TV with your family, it wasn't so bad, but usually it was the loners and the stoners and the degenerates that sort of sat in their basement channel surfing till dawn on cable TV. I Want My MTV, all this stuff was designed as mind control systems in a way to, you know, these cable TV programs were the device to transmit and emit those electromagnetic frequencies. But also in 1984, Gremlins come out. Red Dawn come out. Do you remember Red Dawn? Of course you remember Red Dawn. Wolverines! It was the communist invasion of the United States, but instead of paratroopers jumping out the back of planes and then shooting high school teachers dead in the schoolyard, our communist invaders are electromagnetic, and they are influencing the minds in breeding, in programming the communists within domestic soil. This was the Red Dawn, and Red Dawn also is a reference to Crimson Mist, which was the United States government operation out in Rwanda when during the country's turmoil they generated and created a disaster where they took out the president of the nation, or the prime minister, or whatever the head of state was, and all his cabinet and officials. So the nation was lawless. Two opposing tribes in Rwanda were in conflict in the good old United States, and a Hercules come over by with an electromagnetic dish connected to a Hercules aircraft and bombarded the Rwandans with electromagnetic frequencies, which caused them to fight against each other and resulted in genocide. But as I said, Red Dawn, Crimson Mist, there could be a little bit of similarities there, and this represents, I believe, the invasion of the United States from artificially intelligent communists, not paratrooping communists that would infect the mindset. And bear in mind, a lot of millennials that are the offspring of Generation X's are Antifa. Connecting the dots. But also back to our 1980s movies, and the reason I mention this is because Montauk is set, not Montauk, rather Stranger Things is set in the 80s. So Ghostbusters, something I mentioned, the brimstone, the fire, the ash, if this portal opens, all hell is going to break loose, because the demigod Gozer was going to unleash his army of demons and lost souls and spirits upon the real world once the realms were open and the gatekeeper and the keymaster come together. But where did they come together? On top of a skyscraper in New York. And the reason they chose that skyscraper because of what it was built of, and it was structure. It was a conductor for lightning. Trump Tower in Chicago got struck by lightning. Spoke about that in the time travel movies. So is Ghostbusters based on real events, and the Trump Tower finished its completion in 1983. And also bear in mind that it's in Lower Manhattan. If it is a directed energy weaponry, could it have played a part in the events of a certain Tuesday in September? So there we go with the Ghostbusters, Gremlins, and Red Dawn that come out in 1984. Also, 1984, come on, I'll Be Back, Terminator, time travel, sent the fucking killer robot, an artificial intelligent killer from the future. Sadly, the artificial intelligent killers don't look like Arnold Schwarzenegger or that other guy that had the spikes that run, very scary. That's what they look like. Okay, but they sent artificial intelligence creatures back, not creatures, robots from the future to kill Sarah Connor before she gave birth. So, interportal dimensions, and even the gremlins are a little bit demonic, I guess, once you pour water on them, and we see demons in Demogorgons and Demodogs in Stranger Things. And not only, once we got those movies out of the way from 1984, then we've got Back to the Future, we've got Weird Science, we've got My Science Project, we've got Misfits of Science. All of them connect to interportal dimension, time travel, other realms, yada yada, whoopie woo, ray tay tay. In particular, not Weird Science, My Science Project and Back to the Future both take place in 1985. Both have references to 1955. Both feature Johnny B. Good, and although in Misfits, My Science Project, the dude didn't use a car as a time travel device, he was somebody who had a nice fast car. And at the very, very, very end of the movie, the car sparkled to suggest possibly it was a time travel machine, or would be able to travel through time, because it got affected by the electromagnetic waves. Weird Science, once they made Kelly LeBrock the perfect girl that promised them a party with sex, dips, whips, chips, candle wax on the nipples and chains, and that is almost pro verta, or whatever they say. But anyway, again, interdimensional portals opened and all hell broke loose at that party, and they had to struggle to close the portal and get it all shut down. Another movie that came out around the time, the kind of artificial intelligent war games. The kid, he thought he was playing a computer game, but somehow he targeted into these compute things. Excuse me. So back to Ghostbusters, the Trump Tower, and the TARDIS and Tesla equipment. You know, Tesla's technology lays within the Trump family. Trump have wealth and extravagance to be able to put this stuff together. Have they navigated time travel? Now, with regards to Tesla being shot, what if he wasn't? What if he was from our time and he developed time travel, went back to the 1800s to try and introduce this technology to people before Alexander Graham Bell and all the other people that come along with electricity, is an effort to combat it, but it just didn't work. And I did suggest that the individual that they claim is John F. Kennedy Jr. that's been seen at some of these Trump rallies. What if that's Nikola Tesla? What if he is the Doc? The Doc, remember, went back and lived in the 1800s. He was happier there. He didn't like modern world. But even though he had the time machine and he built a new time machine after the events of during the end of Back to the Future 3, he still lived in the 1800s. So is the Doc Tesla? There you go. But the OA show is trippy, like this sucks. All this stuff is burning, sounds like high voltage. What, you're getting high voltage off of this, or me? Sorry, let me see if I can No, don't go off. It's alright if you go off topic. I sort of lost a little bit of my train of thought because there's just so much, and it's like, you know, are we all, or am I rather connecting all the dots, or do you guys see if there are any dots that are being connected, or am I really, and where is it? Do I really need to wear my good old tinfoil hat, which I made? It's pretty cool, don't you think? Maybe I'll give it away as a prize, but Stranger Things is very, very interesting, as I said, because it sets place in the 80s, and for that alone, I was very, very interested in it. Sorry, I got a squeaky chair. And the attention to detail that they made within that movie on the sort of background stuff, the cans of soda, the candy bars, all the cereal boxes, everything was very, very meticulous to the period of time. In particular, in season 3, they drew a lot of attention to Coca-Cola. Now, something as well that I mentioned about the 80s in the 80s Reality Decoded episode, not only did we start seeing amusement arcades that were surrounded by electronic amusement games in video and computer technology, basically, we started to bring ColecoVisions at home, Ataris, digital watches, VHS recorders, camcorders, all of this digital technology entered the household, as well as junk food. And up until 1985, most sodas used sugar. And the deal with New Coke was it used what is now used in a lot of sodas, fructose corn syrup. And it was supposedly a lot sweeter, but used less sugar for some reason, if I can remember. But New Coke was only out for a few months, I think like 6, not even a few months, 6 or 7 weeks before they reclaimed it. Now, was this purposeful? Did New Coke contain some kind of poison? Did it contain some additive? Did it contain some hormone or proteins that would render people from able to reproduce? Did it introduce ADHD? And again, with Monarch programming, if you kind of introduce something into the adult, then it's sort of a little bit like Hereditary, passing it down. Can these things then be passed down to the offspring? But there was something very, very peculiar about New Coke, and I was very fascinated by New Coke in England because we never ever got it in England. It only got released in the United Kingdom. And the other thing that was very interesting about season 3 of Stranger Things was the shopping mall, and the shopping mall became the front and the smoke screen for the secret lab that was underground. Now, what if every fucking mall in America, and somebody in chat, I can't remember who said, what if there are more than one Montauk? Of course there's more than one Montauk. Montauk's the one that they give us to draw the attention to so we don't look at the other ones, right? Montauk is the Lee Harvey. All right, we know Lee Harvey was alleged to have killed JFK. He didn't, but somebody did. But he's the one that we blame for all of this. Montauk is the Lee Harvey. The radicalized Islamic terrorists on 9/11 were the Lee Harvey. There is always a Lee Harvey in any conspiracy, and is Montauk the patsy in this particular scenario to take the brunt of the conspiracy feel. But the shopping malls, as I've mentioned, along with amusement arcades, and something we mentioned yesterday, they were kind of like Faraday cages, but once you're in them, they kind of can, or rather like a microwave, that once you were sort of in a microwave is a Faraday cage, but once you were inside, you were kind of submitted with electromagnetic frequencies, and lots of malls were very neon-y, bright lights, all this kind of stuff. And we also mentioned the sort of hypnotic mall music that sort of, I sometimes listen to it when I'm doing things just to sort of calm me in the background, just kind of sing elevator music. This was stuff that was on a certain frequency that would give you that kind of opioid effect, so you'd be quite happy to walk around the mall. A little bit kind of similar technology and methods that they use at the casinos. But not only that, the mall was itself surrounded and built with a lot of copper, because they got the blueprints in that. And it turns out that the building, or the mall itself, was a solenoid or a conductor, that once you kind of hit whatever solenoids do within power, I'm not that electronically minded, but they did in fact use the mall as a device to transmit electromagnetic frequencies. And that is something that the nerdy science teacher points out to Winona Ryder. He's got a little train set and model diorama of Hawkins Town. He's a little bit of a geek and a nerd, but he also had built in his little diorama the shopping mall, and he kind of experimented by wrapping the copper around it and doing in a very brief electromagnetic frequency experiment for Winona Ryder. And although they're using the diorama, they're showing you exactly how in real life these shopping malls can be used as a solenoid, and they can be used to transmit electromagnetic frequencies both on the outside and on the inside. And the other thing that was also very interesting, because they had like the demo dogs and the demo gorgons and all these kind of things come back year after year, otherwise there wouldn't be a repeat season, but they have to have a villain to fight. But in season 3, the monster's made up of the minds of other people. They create a hive mind until they get to the point that these people just melt and disintegrate, and then they kind of merge and turn one giant monster. And this is what we're kind of seeing today, that people are becoming hive-minded, certainly with the influence and programming from social media to start copying and pasting the bunny, but changing what it is holding. And this again is your Monarch programming. Pay attention to some of my MK Ultra and EMF frequency videos, and you will start to see it for yourself. Once you see it, you cannot unsee it. There was something else I was just going to talk about in Stranger Things that I've forgotten all of a sudden. Chevy Chase movie, when he turns in another and has a green... What Chevy Chase movie is that? I had something else to talk about. Maybe that was it. The Hive Mind. I'm sure. Sorry, my mind's... As I said, there's just so much bouncing around now. It is a little... Maybe I do need to start taking notes. But okay, just looked up, and it was rumored that Aaron Trump was autistic. Even grocery stores, music and smells that make people want to shop more. You get it. Yeah, the cookie stands, right? And they also had the food court, and you all sort of walked through and always wanted something. And something I found, like when I was married and I had an ex-wife, the last thing in the world I ever wanted to do was go shopping. But when I was in the States, I didn't want to leave the mall. I really, really, really didn't. And this is it. They once you're in there, they kind of bombard you with frequencies, and you get a little bit hypnotized. And this is kind of, what George A. Romero witnessed and why he wrote Dawn of the Dead. And the Dawn of the Dead wasn't necessarily about flesh-eating zombies. It was about brain-dead consumer zombies that just eat and feast upon whatever they are told they superficially need. Their Stranger Things something. Yeah, no, I've gone all the way. It's just gone blank, 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 blank. I wish I could rewind and see for myself. But the Memoirs of the Invisible, again, H.G. Wells. H.G. Wells, Jules Verne, all these people there. Now, I think it might have been something to do... That was it. Okay, I'm back. So, season 1, and this is a little bit, again, where the geek factor comes into play. In season 1, we see the little kids, and they're kind of cool kids, and they were very, very, very like me. That's exactly what I was like, except I didn't have friends to play Dungeons and Dragons with. I was an only child, and not many kids in England liked Dungeons and Dragons. They thought I was a little bit of a geek, but I used to do the choose your own adventure books and sort of have dice and sort of play on myself, a little bit like that. But